Welcome in, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us here for a special episode of FOFL BOFL. I am your host, Mark, or Oh by Mark.
I'm Gregor because I'm GB.
And this week we bring you your back-to-back champion, Bo.
Boo. Yeah, bring on the hate, everyone. Shining Axel is here, back to back champ. Yeah, you guys gotta step up your game. I don't know what to tell you.
God damn
Feeling
it,
Hurts went down. Hurts went down in the semifinals, and I thought I was definitely gonna lose. So I don't know what to tell you. I did everything on my end to give you guys an opportunity to take me down.
I'm blaming the reseeding. It was a sham. You planned this the entire time.
Well,
I think you didn't know the reseeding was going to happen. Oh, I'm so scared of Mark. Meanwhile, you're just like, I'm going to play Alex and I'm going to whoop his ass.
Yeah, well, we know he doesn't know ball, so
right, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you really forgot the fundamentals of the league, which is fuck sellers, because I got Evans, Kelsey, all those IDP guys from him. So if you're looking for someone to blame,
I do blame
Ryan.
Off track.
Yeah,
I mostly blame you, but I do blame Ryan.
Yeah, as you should.
No. I tell you, Bo, I was heartbroken by the way that I lost my match, and then I'll just jump to the thing that you wrote in the doc of no, it doesn't make it better that you beat all of us and nobody would have beat you in the championship. It doesn't make me feel better.
Well, I didn't know, okay, so let's say you beat Corey and you're like, okay, man, if I would have played in the championship, I would have beat him. Then I feel like that loss stings a little bit more. But it's like, it doesn't matter. There's nothing I could have done. So, no.
If I was there, then this week wouldn't have happened the way that it did.
My defense would have played better than Corey's did.
Oh, okay. That's what would have happened. If you were in a different position, you would have given your players a really good talking to.
Yeah.
And they would have stepped up. All right. That was my fault.
Motivation.
My bad.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because going into third place match against Alex, I didn't have to motivate my team. So I didn't try.
Yeah, that's fair. I really underestimated that aspect of it. Well, what can I say? I'm here. I'm not going away. So I'm not, as you and Rob suggested, being forced out of the league and or letting Zach and Lauren set my lineup for next year.
I think that's a great idea.
All right. Well, we can vote on it and see what everyone thinks.
No, congratulations, Bo. It truly is impressive. I have a couple leagues that mean a lot to me. This one obviously being the most important one to me. And it just pains me to see you win 4 in a row, but it's super impressive because everybody in this league is good at what they're doing. So there's so much competition. The fact that you've won 4 times in a row is absolutely insane. It's very impressive. Congratulations. You deserve it.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. As we've all said, this is my favorite league. This is my core league, the one I put the most time into. So yeah, feels great and appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Congrats to Corey and you as well for hitting second and third. I know that's not meant to sound condescending, but you guys still get money, so
yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah,
I know it's not the same.
It's fine.
Not. I get it. No, I understand.
I beat Alex, so that made me feel good.
Yeah, and I beat Alex for you, so that was for you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So as long as Alex didn't somehow pull this off, I was pretty okay with the results.
Yeah, after Alex, great. I was shocked when Alex beat you, and then I was like, if Alex fucking makes it all the way, I'm just gonna be like, I don't know what the fuck is going on with that league right now.
That would have made me feel worse than you winning again.
Yeah, I would. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I was just everyone. I was like, okay, makes sense. And you're like, Alex, what the fuck are you doing here? Go home. You're drunk. Get out of here.
All right, gentlemen. Well, just to prime everybody, we have a long one for you today here. We're going to do a lot of review, deep dive into what we've kind of seen through the year. So I'm hoping that we have a good discussion today. So that's going to mean that we have a longer episode for you. Hopefully you don't mind, especially since Going into the off season, these are probably not going to be weekly. Yeah, I don't think they need to be weekly in the off season. I'll do updates here and there. I'll probably do another one shortly just to do like awards and stuff like that and kind of talk about nominees that everybody has sent me. But after that, it'll probably be few and far in between. So hopefully you don't mind a little bit of a longer one today. But the new tradition here is that we're going to do an icebreaker. So I've got a few would you rathers for you, gentlemen. We're going to get spicy with the first one. Would you rather be the opposite sex for a day or be any animal you want for a day?
I'd be any animal, and I would be my dog. So
would Maya or Ellie be your choice? And then would they get to be you for the day?
Well, no.
Is this a Freaky Friday situation?
I hope not, because having a dog as me would definitely ruin some things in my life, I think.
I would rather it be Maya if Maya gets to be you, because then I just know that she's going to sleep on the couch for most of the day.
But yeah, I mean, that'd probably just be it. It's just like I want to live the comfortable life that I provide to my animals. So yeah.
So question, is it just for one day, or do I get to do this again like later in the future and do a different
just one day, 24 hours?
I think I'd go with the animal. I think Greg's answer is pretty solid. Being Cora or my dog. Again, just get everything handed to you and you don't have to work for anything. But when you get a little bit more spicy or adventurous, I think it'd be cool to be like a bird. Like my favorite bird is a falcon, but regardless, just to be able to like fly and be up there in the sky. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. But I'd have to be a bird where I'm like not worried about getting eaten. Like if I can survive for 24 hours, I'm good.
Right, you got to be a big bird.
Yeah.
Make sure that there aren't other big birds that are going to eat you.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd plan accordingly. But yeah, I think animal for sure would be my choice.
Yeah, I would be an animal, and I was going to say some type of bird as well, because being able to fly around for a day would be dope.
Yeah, that'd be so sick.
And see for like miles, just like be able to see everything. Yeah, thank you. I'll take that.
Just be one of the random geese that fly around our fucking neighborhood during the wintertime. It's like just in the way constantly, loud and obnoxious and in the way.
Or sandhill cranes that don't get the fuck out of the road.
Yeah, we've got a lot of sandhills here, and same thing. They just like stand there and they're like, what are you going to do?
They yell at you.
Yeah.
Rude. With their velociraptor screech.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, next would you rather? Would you rather, we're going to get dark, would you rather drown to death in the ocean, specifically the ocean, or burn alive in a volcano?
I'm going to go with drown in the ocean, because then at least my body will be like repurposed for something useful versus like, it's going to fucking suck either way, right? So like, I'd rather just, be food and like be like something, helpful as opposed to just like burnt.
Well, I was thinking, so I'm going to answer a little bit more selfishly in the sense of my body wouldn't be repurposed, but I feel like it would go so much faster if you go into a volcano. That was my thought. Like if I'm drowning, I would suffer and then it'd take a while. I go in a volcano. I haven't done the math at how fast, but you would think it'd be pretty quick that you'd be like incinerated.
Yeah. And I would be able to just at nobody, because I assume nobody's around, but I would be able to just scream, I hate you while I'm burning alive. So that would be cool. Reenact Star Wars.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever had accidentally had water go down your throat or something, if you're in the pool of the ocean, that sucks. Bad. Like having to do that for like several minutes, that would
like struggling, trying to not die. Yeah, that would suck. I'm just gonna lay in the lava and be like, all right, please be over quick.
Yeah. I'm with you, Mark. That's how I would go.
Yeah, that's also my thought there. Okay, next one. Would you rather be a famous musician with a one-hit wonder or write a best-selling book?
I'm going to go with write a best-selling book.
Wow, that surprises me, Greg.
Well, because, I get tired of music. I get tired of songs after hearing them enough times. And if you're a one-hit wonder, then in order for you to remain financially viable, you're probably playing that song over and over and over and over again. Look what happened to the guy from fucking Smash Mouth, you know what I mean? Whereas like if I wrote a best-selling book, that's just like passive income for the rest of my life. Occasionally I go sign my name on some shit, but like people don't recognize me. I get to be private but still have passive income, you know?
I mean, if you're successful enough, you're recognizable.
I guess, but like the average person didn't know who like what Stephanie Myers looked like when fucking Twilight was huge. And like I don't know what Sarah J. Maas, was that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what she looks like. You know what I mean? Like the average person
the average
doesn't know.
person.
Yeah.
Whereas like
if you read books, though, you do. I don't know. To be fair, I don't know that I would know what musicians that have one-hit wonders look like unless they were famous for other reasons.
Right, but like the chances of somebody seeing your music video or seeing you perform that song on something and then recognizing you is much higher than somebody happening to go by Barnes and Noble and notice that you're doing a book signing next month. You know what I mean? So like I just feel like there's more privacy to being an author than there is to being a famous musician.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, I think in a vacuum, the average person would know like the musician, even if it was a one-hit wonder, versus an author. Like, I think some people like would know, what George R. Martin looks like or J.K. Rowling, especially with social media and stuff. But I think in a vacuum, most people would know who you were. Plus, I feel like if someone's like, oh, like I wrote a best-selling book, you're like, okay, that's a cool accomplishment. Like, obviously you probably want to try and write more, but even if you didn't, I feel like that'd be cool. But let's say you're a one-hit wonder, don't you feel like you'd always feel like you never like really made it?
You're seen more as a one hit song
Yeah.
is seen as like a failure, whereas like one hit book is still like pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think. Like one hit one. It's like not even like, oh, the whole album was great. It was like one song was great, and that's how you're remembered for your whole career. Versus best-selling book, you're like, all right, you did it. That's awesome. Like, good job. So I think you'd be remembered better that way too.
That's a valid point, I think. I hadn't considered that.
All right. Next one. For 2025, starting today, you can only eat either pizza or sushi. Go.
Probably pizza.
Yeah.
I just don't like enough sushi to eat that all year.
What's more tempting than sushi, since both of you are pretty quick to say no to that? How about pizza, or we'll just go, we'll keep it traditional American, pizza or burgers?
Ooh, probably burgers.
Burgers, okay.
Pizza's good, but I like burgers better.
I think in a vacuum, this is kind of similar to the question last time you had. I think you were like, oh, it was a question similar to that. I forget what it was. And you brought up a good point, Mark, where there's more versatility with pizza. I think in a vacuum, like if I'm just having one meal, I'd rather have a burger than pizza. But if I have to do it all year, I can add different toppings. I can do meat, I can do veggie. There's all these crazy pizzas now. There's like, a taco pizza and like the white pizza, barbecue. So it's not only like red sauce. So I think for that, I would do pizza. The only reason I was quick before is because I don't eat sushi. So it was pretty easy option.
Yeah.
It was pizza or sushi.
Fair. I literally got these. I got these from a website. So I was like, I don't know if either, like, I was like, Greg's going to choose pizza, but I was like, I don't know Bo's taste. So, yeah. So pizza or burgers, you're going pizza. I would go pizza for the record. Again, versatility.
Yeah.
The sushi I enjoy is either incredibly expensive or vegan. So there's that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, if you ever come out and visit us, but like, why don't you eat sushi? Let me ask that.
I just don't like seafood. Like, it's sad because I live in Florida. There's a ton of fresh seafood. And as like, I've tried to like it because it is so good here. At least some fish, but when I eat it, I'm just like, this does not taste good to me. I don't like shrimp. I don't like any shellfish. Lobster's like okay, but it's pretty bland. Like, there's a reason people eat lobster with butter.
It's a butter.
Yeah. But like I've tried crab before, I've tried shrimp, I've tried tilapia, grouper, like all these things, salmon. I just don't.
None of it
don't
does
like it.
anything for you, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
nothing positive. Yeah.
All right. Well, I was gonna say, if you ever come out and visit us, there's a vegan sushi place that is absolutely delicious, and we go there because Greg is allergic to shellfish. So
Yeah.
when we want sushi, he can eat whatever he wants to there, not have to worry about it. But it is like absolutely delicious. I'd put it next to any sushi place I've ever had.
I mean, I'd be willing to try it. I'm the kind of person where I'm like, I'm willing to try anything like once, but if I don't like it, I'm not gonna also be the person where it's like, you have to eat it because it's there. Like, you don't like it,
Yeah.
don't eat it.
Well, the nice thing about this place is that it's not just a sushi place. Like they have ramen bowls and stuff like that. So,
okay.
like, if you're not like only getting sushi, you can get like a ramen bowl and then get a roll on the side. And so, in case you don't like it, still you're not like stuck with just that. So, yeah, it's a very good place.
No, that sounds good. Like I've had like there's some places where they'll do like the cheeseburger roll or stuff where it's like not actual
Not
fish in
traditional
there.
sushi, yeah.
Yeah, not traditional sushi. So I've had that before. But yeah, no, that sounds great. Next time I'm in the area, hit you up.
All right. So the last one that we'll do, also food related. I'm interested to see what you guys say on this one because I don't know which one I would want. Would you rather have every food you eat be too salty or every drink you drink be too sweet?
This was very hard for me because everything, like, I wouldn't say everything. A lot of my things revolve around food. I love to eat, as do most people, but I love to cook. Like, I think very hard about what I want to have for dinner, what I want to have for lunch. So this was the hardest question on the list. I feel like I'm going to lean towards the drinks being too sweet just because I feel like I could counteract that a little bit better versus if something's really salty, I just feel like it like kills your palate. And
Yeah.
it would just be really hard to like get back from that. But that I wouldn't want either. That would be very tough.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Does water also count in this?
Yep,
or is water still just water?
Water would taste sugary. It'd be like a flavorless Gatorade.
I don't know. I think I still go drinks too sweet, but I don't.
I wish
like
you guys
too much
could
sweetness.
see my face.
Well, it's just like they both. they both sound.
It's like, oh my god, that sounds fucking terrible.
Yeah. No, I mean when you're really thirsty and all you want is like a nice clean glass of water and you can't quench that thirst.
Yeah,
that would drive me batshit crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I go drinks too sweet, but yeah, it's definitely not a easy choice.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where I was leaning as well. But sweet drinks like are fine when they're appropriately sweet.
Yeah.
Like an ice cream like milkshake, that's supposed to be sweet. You know, coffee with creamer and sugar is supposed to be sweet, but like then if you get like too much of that sugary flavor in coffee, it just tastes like sickly sweet. Ugh.
Well, it's like we all obviously are all big beer drinkers too. Like, can you imagine? Like, it would kill all your
IPA.
Yeah.
I'm drinking a Tripel right now, so it's a little on the sweet side, but you know.
But like appropriately so.
Right. Like it's sweet.
It's still
like
very
bread
malty.
is sweet.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very
exactly.
malty.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, sorry to improvise, but like I always love asking people this question. It's a would you rather, but would you rather never have another warm meal, like another hot meal again? Or would you never have another cold beverage again? So like the meal can be cooked like it would be hot, but you can't have it until like when you go to eat it, it's room temperature. Or you're like, you can't ever have like, you know, it's a room temperature beer. It's
or hot drinks. You can never
or hot
have
drinks.
Drink anymore.
You can never have a cold beverage again.
My answer flip-flops on this one.
Mine's a hot. I would give up the hot meal because a cold beer, like cold water when you're like fucking hot after doing something, like is just one of the best fucking satiations like ever. So I don't know. Like after a hike, a cold beer is so good.
Yeah, I think I would go with the drink too, because I feel like I can manage with room temp food. It wouldn't be like as good, but I think
Right.
there's enough foods out there where I can manage. But yeah, I agree that like really cold water, really cold beer, like when you're really craving it, is just like I don't think I don't think I could survive without that, but I could survive without the hot food. I wouldn't enjoy
I
it.
think, I
I'd
think,
probably never drink soda again if I had to drink it at room temperature,
Yeah,
to be
no,
honest with you.
yeah, I think as of right now that I disagree with you guys because it only eliminates a handful of drinks that I wouldn't touch, like beer.
Yeah.
Room temperature or hot beer is gross. Looking
You
at
never
you,
get to have
England.
iced. You never get to have iced coffee again.
That's okay. I can still have coffee. It's not my preference to always drink it hot,
Yeah.
but I still get it. And like you said, soda. I'm not going to drink room temperature soda. Well, but like food, there's so many foods that I'm just now not going to eat because they're either cold or room temperature. I won't touch them.
I'm gross. I eat so many things just
No.
right out of the
Like
fridge.
one of the
I don't
things,
care.
yeah, one of the things that Greg does that grosses me out. Sorry to put you on blast, Greg, but I know you don't.
It's okay.
Fucking
I'll
cold
defend it.
and room temperature chicken wings. Get out of here with that nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't enjoy that. Here's the thing, like, I guess in my head, like, the cold thing, obviously, but room temp, I'm like, it's not enjoyable, but room temp, it's not like, you're like, it's not bad. But I think it depends, like you said, like, you can heat it up and let it cool down, because there's a difference. Like, if I'm eating wings that have been heated up, let's say I'm going out, right, and been sitting around watching a game or whatever, and I go to grab that last wing, and it's, like, not hot anymore. But if it's not cold yet, it's okay because, the chicken's still chewy, but if it's, like, coming
It's
out of the
only
fridge,
nah, it's only because you're drunk is why that's okay.
well, that works too.
No.
I mean, I feel like you make a
Some
convincing
fair.
argument, but I feel like I can manage room temp. The cold thing would throw me off, but if you're allowed to have it room temp,
Yeah.
I feel like I can manage with that.
I bet you some parents would tell you that they live a life of only eating room temperature meals.
Yeah, because they're parents. That's their choice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a strong choice of parent. Either that or you just alternate and you say, all right,
Yeah.
like parent one gets the hot meal tonight and parent two gets the hot meal the next night. But yeah, you can't have it all. You can't have it all. Or you just eat your kids' food. That's what I do.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're not going to eat all that.
Give me that.
Rarely does.
You know what I've never another tangent. You know what I've never done it, but you know what I've always wanted to steal from like all of our friends' kids that they always have? Those like puff things that they all eat nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
The Gerber puffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with the puffs. They're a
Yeah.
big hit in our house.
Yeah, they're every
the
single
vanilla
one of
ones
our
are good.
friends that have kids, it's puffs. That's what their snack of choice is.
Yeah.
And they look so delicious, but I'm not going to steal a kid's snack.
I mean, they're probably not that different than like, granted, take out the flavor portion, but like the puffed like Rice Krispies.
Yeah, that's what I imagine they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
like a Kick cereal.
yeah, but I think the Kix is more dense. Like I think
Okay.
the puffs are very like light. Like
Light.
sometimes you go to Asian
Okay.
restaurants or like on sushi and you'll get like the little crisps on
Oh, I
food,
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's more similar to that.
Oh, makes it sound even more delicious.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I'm going to make them and I'm going to just manufacture the exact same thing. Just market them for adults. And
think
I
you
think
can
it's
make-
just French's. I think it's just French's crispy onions that you buy in a can.
nah, those are
no, it's a different texture though. Those are like
Yeah.
more
Those are
solid
crunchy.
crunchy. I
Yeah.
think living in Denver with the munchies that people get there, I think you could probably make a solid profit if you did something like that.
adult rice
Marketed
puffs.
as like a healthier alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that way when they're
Self
snacking on them,
for $17 for 6 ounces.
and just put a pretty little label around it. And
Organic, gluten free.
yeah.
Vegan.
Sounds good. Sign me up. You have different flavors too. You could have like sriracha, have like
jalapeno cheddar.
There you go. Jalapeno cheddar, barbecue. Sounds good.
A1.
All right, we got an idea. We're in.
Sounds good.
We'll cut this portion out so no one steals
so
it.
All right, let's jump over to the quick question of the week. Two-parter here for you, gentlemen. Who is going to win the NFL MVP? But who do you think deserves to win the MVP?
Okay, so we're talking about football now, I guess.
Yeah, we're switching football. I'm keeping us on track. Sorry.
No, I was just kidding. But yeah, I think that Josh Allen will probably win MVP. I think that he deserves it. Like, I don't think that feels like it was just, we're tired of voting for Pat Mahomes, so we're giving it to somebody else type situation or anything like that. That being said, like, I was going to try and make an argument for like Saquon because, with what he's done this season, it's been pretty incredible. But quick look at Derrick Henry's 2,000-yard season from 2020. Derrick Henry had a better season, and it's one of those where like Saquon didn't even have one of the better 2,000-yard seasons. He finished with 13 touchdowns, which is pretty good. Henry finished with 17 his year. And I think that Jalen Hurts is a big reason for that, the tush push into the end zone kind of thing. I feel like, I made the jokes all season, but I think had a legitimate impact on how many touchdowns Saquon, had. If they had a more traditional style quarterback, they would be handing it off as opposed to pushing their butt.
Can I interrupt and make a devil's advocate argument here?
Sure.
So while I understand what you're saying, and I do think that the touchdown numbers not being in Saquon's favor are because of Jalen Hurts, but I also think that if you gave, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you do. If you gave Saquon the running volume that Derrick Henry got, and you took away or you made his passing opportunities that he gets rushing opportunities, he breaks the record in 16 games.
Yeah, I mean, probably. Still
16 games.
Yeah.
So the devil's advocate is, he didn't have an impressive rushing season, but he also added whatever he added in the receiving game. That's not part of Derrick Henry's game. That's not part of most of those people's game that are up there in the 2,000 club. And that is part of Saquon's game. So however many receiving yards he has, if you turned those into 40% of the rushing effectiveness, right? He breaks the record pretty easily, but he got 300, 400, 500 yards through the air, and that takes away rushing opportunities from himself.
So I don't know how, interested you are in, I'm curious to see if these numbers, I'm curious to see if these numbers feel like, to me, they feel obviously different, but close enough that I feel what you're saying. So Saquon had 345 attempts this season.
Okay.
Derrick Henry had 378 his season.
Okay, hold on a
second.
So
he did have 33 more.
33 more?
Yeah, 345 to 378. So he had 33 more touchdowns.
Okay,
30 more attempts, sorry.
What did Saquon average this year per attempt?
Saquon was averaging 5.8 yards.
So add on another 191 yards. If he gets those 33 more opportunities, he gets another 191 yards and breaks the record by a good margin.
Yeah, that's true. He does have, because Derrick Henry only finished with 22 more yards than he will in the regular season.
Saquon has played out of his fucking mind this year.
He's got 278 receiving yards this year. Okay. 33 receptions.
32.
33.
33 receptions, 43 targets, 33 receptions.
So not as high as I thought. I thought he was more involved in the passing. I would have expected it to be like 60 targets.
He only has two receiving touchdowns this year.
Yeah, no, he doesn't get into the end zone very much, but I thought he was getting like 3 to 5 catches a game.
No, not quite that high, but still impressive.
Yeah, he's still averaging 6 yards
Yeah.
a catch.
But yeah, I
So-
think it's comparing to Derrick Henry is obviously what we're gonna do. But yeah, I think that if you gave Saquon the volume, he would have been more. He wouldn't have been as efficient just because your body is going to break down. That's a whole extra game or two that we're giving to Saquon, right? So it's one of those things where maybe he's not as efficient the whole season if you give him that workload, but I think he still easily crosses the threshold if he stays healthy if you give him that workload.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
But it didn't happen. So I agree with you. He doesn't deserve the MVP because he didn't get those extra carries, right?
Yeah. So the record-setting season, 16 games, Eric Dickerson had 379 rushing attempts.
Yeah.
Finished with 2,105 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns, and averaged yards. Is that right? No.
2105 divided by 370 what?
Oh, there we go. Yards per attempt. 5.6 yards per attempt is what he averaged, which is it perfectly splits Saquon this year and Derrick Henry in his 2,000-yard season. Saquon is 5.8 and Derrick Henry was 5.4 yards per attempt, and Eric Dickerson's 5.6. I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
Josh Allen.
Yeah, sorry, Craig. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just gonna say I feel like there's definitely a fun conversation to be made there for Saquon, but yeah.
I just said Saquon, and like more than anything, I was going to try and make that argument for Saquon, and then kind of looking at it, it's like 2,000 yards and what he did is impressive, but like you kind of realize, it made me realize why quarterbacks are the ones always winning it when you look at all the rest of like how they affect the game,
Yeah, I think it's like an unfair kind of association with them because if you're taking the title seriously, most valuable player, usually majority of the time the quarterback, especially if you got a stud QB, is going to be the most valuable player regardless. So it's kind of like the most valuable quarterback of the year award, not the most valuable player. I've used no, go ahead.
I actually think that last year should have been a year in which they gave it to Christian McCaffrey, because I don't think that Lamar Jackson's season was otherworldly to easily hand it to a quarterback. Whereas I think this season we've got a Josh Allen, we've got Lamar Jackson, we've got Joe Burrow. So like there's easy players to point to that are having remarkable seasons at the quarterback position that outshine what Saquon has done.
Yeah,
but I think last year that wasn't the case.
I think that's a fair argument. So in like Florida, I use Hard Rock Bet, and the odds for MVP: Josh Allen minus 325, Lamar Jackson plus 230, Saquon plus 1600, Joe Burrow plus 2250, and then everything else is like plus 10,000.
Yeah.
So Josh Allen, pretty heavy favorite, even like because the next one is Lamar Jackson at plus 230, and Josh Allen's like minus 325. So it's like not even close.
No.
With that being said, I would also say Josh Allen. I think earlier in the year I would have said Lamar Jackson, and then similar to the points you brought up, I believe last podcast, Mark, just the value to the actual team, not the impressive stats for the season. I feel like Josh Allen doesn't have like anyone to throw to. So the fact that he's like doing that is very impressive. So not only would I say he's going to win, but I would say he also deserves to win, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep. I don't disagree with you guys at all. My player that I'll give the nod to, though, is Baker.
Yeah.
Baker has carried this team. Baker has absolutely carried this team. The defense has been okay. Mike Evans got hurt, lost Chris Godwin, had to rely on Cade Otton for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You're relying on a rookie running back most of the time because you lost Rashad White. He's played really, really well. I think that he deserves some votes. I think that, in my definition, Josh Allen fits it better because he's doing the same thing. He doesn't have the skilled talent around him, and he's carrying that team. I mean, he carried that team better than Baker Mayfield did. So I don't think Baker Mayfield deserves it more than Josh Allen, but I think Baker Mayfield deserves a couple of votes, a couple of consideration nods in his way that say, hey, we're recognizing the fact that to your team, you are the most valuable player on the field, and you showed that by winning your division.
Yeah, I mean, obviously as a Bucs fan, I've watched Baker. I think there's only one game I didn't go to watch him all the way through. So I've watched pretty much every snap he's taken this year. And yeah, I mean, he's a stud. Like, he's been awesome. Very happy to have him on our team. I think going back to kind of the Josh Allen comparison, even with the Godwin injury and Evans being out a couple years, he still has like better weapons around him. Like, Evans is a stud, Godwin's a stud, White's been a decent running back. But yeah, I mean,
Buffalo has advantage in the running back department for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But with all that being said, yeah, if you look at it in a vacuum, the way Baker's played this year has just been phenomenal. And a lot of that credit goes to him. A lot of that credit goes to our OC, Liam Cohen, who's just like, you know, taking this team that was probably, in a potential to maybe compete for the division, and then just like taking them to where they're like playoff contenders. So props to both of them. And I think the Baker comments, I would definitely stand by that.
Yeah.
So give me 1 second here. I'm just curious. I'm just trying to put a little bit of context to this. Very interesting little stat. Oh, they're number 3. Okay, that makes sense. So just out of curiosity, I was like looking at Pro Football Focus Pro Football Reference, and there's a stat in here where they give you the yards lost due to sacks for each, like for the quarterback on the season.
Mm-hmm.
And for reference, Pat Mahomes has lost 239 yards due to sacks this season. Okay. Baker Mayfield has lost, where is it? Right here? No. Sorry, guys. Has lost 243 yards due to sacks this year.
Okay.
Josh Allen has lost 63 yards due to sacks.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Isn't that great? That's crazy, right?
Yeah, that's like what?
So just quick Google, Buffalo's offensive line is ranked number 3 on the season in terms of like their skills. And then I'm just getting a bunch of ads, so I can't see the rest of them. But yeah, so like, they definitely have one of the better. Okay, Tampa's number 4, and Baker lost 200 and something yards in terms of like sacks and stuff. So like Josh Allen, like that's one of those stats that like I never would have known that. But like, why don't they talk about that? That feels so impressive to me. Like he's not hurting your team at all. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, it's wild. They're never moving backwards because of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to go back. So when you brought up the O-line, I was going to say I didn't know what the number was, but I figured Tampa's O-line was pretty high up there. Obviously, we've got Wirfs at left tackle, who's like one of, if not the best left tackles in the game. But yeah, I mean, I think that goes to show Allen's superior. I mean, no one's going to argue that Allen's a way better quarterback than Baker, regardless of what Baker's done this season. Plus, his mobility helps him so much. Like, Baker will run for first, but it's not like he's like lightning on his feet or anything. I mean, you can see he's just trying to make a play. But Allen can turn anything, like any loss of yards, into a play if he needs to. He's just so versatile. And that, like, the 63 to 260 or something like that, 280. That's
Pat Mahomes 239. So
that's crazy. That is crazy.
Right?
So I just shared my screen with you, gentlemen, so you can look at it and see if you want to call out anything or have me sort it. But I have access through another league I'm in to Premium PFF. And so they have their grading. And so I've got this sorted on the pass block rating. And they actually have Tampa rated as number 2 for pass block and Buffalo as number 5. So even more impressive that from a pass block perspective, he has a worse O-line than Tampa. But what is that, a 200-yard difference on sack yards?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. It was one of those that, like, as I was looking at the stats, I was trying to find their rushing yard stats. And so I was kind of like hovering over each of the yards, like, category for the season. And that came up, and I was like, man, that seems super low. So, like, yeah, even Jalen Hurts, who, according to, that thing that you have pulled up, the Eagles are like, what, 3 or something?
Eagles are 4.
4, like, still a better line. Jalen Hurts, 271 yards given up to sacks. Like Josh Allen, again, like, that's just, I don't know, super fascinating stat in terms of, like, how he's helping the team the most by not getting tackled in the backfield. You know what I mean? Just super, super impressive.
Very impressive. Do me a favor. Look up two players for me. Look up Drake May. Actually, let's do 3. Look up Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams.
Oh no.
Yeah. So the reason
Williams.
The reason why I'm really curious about them, I'd also be curious about Bo Nix because they have the number 1 pass block, but I don't really care that much. The reason why I'm curious about those 3 in particular, Drake May, I don't think took a whole lot of sacks this year once he started getting into the rhythm, but our O-line is fucking trash. We're the second to worst in pass block, ahead of only the Saints. So our O-line is absolute dog shit. So I'm really curious to see how many yards he lost. And then Jaden Daniels scrambles a lot. So I'm curious to see how he fared under the number 22 ranked offensive line for pass block. And then Caleb Williams got sacked 1.5 billion times this year, but they are ranked number 9 in pass block efficiency. So that tells me that a lot of those sacks are his fault.
Yeah, that's an argument to be made. So Drake May has been sacked 33 times for 220 yards.
Okay.
Jaden Daniels has been sacked 43 times for 220 yards.
Okay.
Caleb Williams has been sacked 67 times for 459 yards.
Yikes.
Wow.
Yeah, he's got to fix that. That's his fault.
He's getting sacked 11% of the time, and he's averaging, what is this one? No, that's not what it is. But yeah, he's getting sacked 11% of the time, and yeah, fucking 459 yards lost due to sacks.
How many sacks again?
67.
That's almost 7 yards a sack. So dude's just stepping back and not stepping up into his pocket.
I think,
even though he's holding the ball, and then he's scrambling and he's doing one of those things where he's running in like a U formation.
Yeah, he tries to roll out, but like spin.
But he's running backwards 10 yards instead of doing it, 3 yards deep. And so yeah, that's not good.
Yep.
That also gives me hope for Drake May.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is rookie, just him needing to be in the league a little bit more and like kind of that transition from college to NFL, or how much of that is just pure like bad decision making. So I'll be really curious to see what happens with him.
I don't know enough about their coaches to really speak on that, but that screams to me because I don't think you put up the respectable season that, in my opinion, Caleb Williams put up as a rookie and get sacked that much if you don't have the skill set in order to carry a team, right? So I think that he's done a good job. So I would also do a lot of finger pointing at the coaching staff That
Right. They didn't train it out of him.
Yeah, that's not picking up what he needs help with and helping him to the best of your ability. That's not showing him how to fix what he's doing consistently enough. So that's finger pointing at the coaching staff, in my opinion.
I mean, the coach got fired after the Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Eberflus, right?
Eberflus, yeah.
Yeah.
Lauren's
But
a
like,
Bear
who's the
stand.
quarterback coach? You know, who's responsible for him, and should he be fired?
I mean, probably, and maybe when they get a new coach, a lot of times they change a lot of those,
they clean house
people under them. Yeah. Those good points.
Yeah, just interesting. Cool. All right, we will jump into the next segment. This is the only one today that will be familiar to you guys. From here on out, after this one, we'll jump into some new stuff. But I didn't want to ignore the pick'ems, so we'll spend a handful of minutes on the pick'em results from week 17 and kind of preview the next week as well. But we're not going to go through picks this week. So, Greg, take it away. Give us a review of last week. And then we'll kind of jump in and talk about who's actually competing for the win here.
Yeah, so real quick, like Mark said, we're probably just going to kind of skim over a lot of this and not dive as intricately as we had before. But so Anthony and Adrian tied for the win this week with 13 correct guesses, and Rob right behind him at 12 for third place. Mark, Corey in fifth, tied for fifth with 11. Coulter had 10, Brian had 9, Ryan had 8, me and Bo had 7, and Alex decided that he was too busy. So he got none.
Oh, I will say, Alex reached out to me last week, and he got logged out of Sleeper, and he can't get logged back in. Like it's like not allowing him to get back in the app. So he hasn't been able to actually access anything. So he's got to reach out to Sleeper to get it fixed.
So
not his fault.
We need to find So we need to find somebody else for the league next year.
Yeah, probably.
But just to like point out a couple like standout picks, I was the only one to pick Chicago in that game. Everybody else picked Seattle. I could have been a really good pick here because that game looked bad. It was a bad game. It was the 6-3 game that like it was just rainy and terrible the whole time.
Horrible.
That game was
what a terrible game.
I lost a championship match.
Because of Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze.
Yeah, it's a dynasty league, and so I was running with Joe Burrow and Caleb all year. And then because of other injuries, I had to start Roma Dunze. And in that game, they combined for like 8 points.
Rough.
Yep.
And then Brian was the only one to pick New England, also an incorrect pick. The Chargers obviously beat them pretty handedly. That game kind of got away from you guys really quickly. That was interesting. Drake May got knocked out, and then it felt like everybody was like, oh, we're done.
But he came back in pretty shortly after.
Yeah.
I didn't watch any of the game, so I don't know why we looked like shit. But yeah, we apparently look like shit.
So, and then Brian and Rob were the only ones to select the Jets to win. To win or to cover the spread? I don't remember. Oh, to cover the spread. And yeah, Buffalo fucking whooped that ass. So that was the incorrect pick there. And then Corey was the only one to pick San Francisco. That game was actually like pretty interesting. The fact that they won by 6 points feels not like that. That even feels like too big of a spread considering that game being like back and forth most of it. So yeah, just a few of the interesting picks. Right now, the pick'ems overall, 2 people tied for first in the ranking. So it will come down to this week. Coulter and Rob are currently tied for first with 143 total points. And Ryan is in third right behind him with 141 total points. Adrian's at 138. So theoretically, if the 3 guys ahead of him have terrible weeks in picks, like if I'm Adrian, I'm trying to pick wild picks just to try and make up some points. But it's pretty much a three-way race right now between the ones at the top. And so far, it's been, if I look at the last couple weeks, they've all had not a last 4 weeks they've all had not a great week and then pretty solid weeks otherwise. So who knows? It could go whichever way and we'll have to wait to see if it hopefully comes down to like Monday night games, you know?
I have a question for you, gentlemen. Are we happy with the way that Pick'em went this year, or do we
No.
want to make it a little bit more interesting for everybody instead of just the one person that wins? So, to elaborate, and my idea, it would involve just being, more money into fantasy, which, I think we're all degenerates here. If we did say $20 for the pick'em for 11 of us, $1 per week, and then $2 for overall. So if you win a week, you get $11. And then if you win the whole thing, you get an additional $22.
So you're just basically, so you care more on a week-to-week basis
On a
rather than
week-to-week basis, you're rewarded for having a good week for that week. And then you're also rewarded for consistency by winning the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that would be doable. I mean, if everyone was down to increase the payout, and then the tiebreaker would become more important because I think right now no one really cares about the tiebreaker.
Week-to-week
of doing your
tiebreakers.
picks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Like right now, it
Yeah.
doesn't do anything because you're just looking at your final total.
Yeah, it might matter this week, but yeah, other than this week, it doesn't matter.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, people don't even do them. Like the points or whatever, if
Yeah.
you look at the tiebreakers all the way at the end, like people don't even put them in.
Uh-oh.
You see that?
Do your tiebreakers. No, I'm not looking at it. I'm going right now.
So if you look, yeah, it's like you can see like you, Coulter, Ryan, and I put like, did you do a tiebreaker, Bo?
Oh, yeah.
No,
We're
I did
putting
this
them in.
week. So this was the week, remember, I posted on the chat where, because of the holidays and stuff, I put all my pick'ems in early, and then I was like, oh, it's
Oh,
gonna be a
right.
shit week. So I normally do, but this week I didn't.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it was just Christmas, but yeah, it was just
Yeah, for
like
sure.
one of those
All right,
where,
well, maybe I'll go in and put a reminder. I would hate to see somebody lose because they weren't aware of that or something like that.
but so yeah, I mean, I say no because obviously,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not super obvious.
No, I'm going back at other weeks though, and there's some weeks where there's only like 3 people that put it in, so it's not just a Christmas thing. I think it's consistent. I don't even know if everyone knew it was there, honestly, because it is kind of hidden.
Okay, but yeah, so it'll come down to Monday night to see who wins. I only didn't like how it went because I didn't win, and I'm a sore loser. So
yeah, I'll just say overall, it was kind of interesting to see how that spread out. As far as who like some people I think were consistently like in the middle. Some people like had really good weeks and really bad weeks, and that doesn't really reflect at when you look at the total points. But I think it was a fun addition to the league overall. I liked it.
Yeah, I like it. Plus, I like the idea of like when we do the podcast, if somebody's on, we make them do their picks like live.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it's a good way to add more fantasy content without literally just going and looking like player by player and being like, all right, these are popular players, these are unpopular players. You kind of go game by game, like cornerback matchups, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, maybe I'll float that out there to see if we want to boost this or if we're just happy where it is and have it being completely secondary. But I think dropping $20 on something like that isn't hard to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we'll also quickly touch on the key matchups that we have this week. Obviously, we touched on your championship matchup, Bo. And it got away from Corey pretty quickly. That Chiefs game, I was like, yeah, this is done. It's done. It's over. It's hard to bounce back from stuff like that.
Convenient for the Chiefs to look like that right before they go into fucking playoff mode.
No shit. They're just gonna win again, and it fucking drives me insane. I think the only team that could have beat them was the Lions. And I don't think that the Lions are healthy enough to beat anybody in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the injuries right now on defense, I think it's really unfortunate because it'd be nice to see two teams play at like their full strength and not just lose by like a technicality, like, oh, we had too many injuries. That's part of the game, but it's still like not really fair because you're like, oh, they're definitely the better team, but because they had bad luck here, bad luck there, then it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this the other day. I know that obviously they've improved the IR stuff with the short-term IR edition, which I think is great for the game. But I think that the NFL needs to expand rosters. I mean, I think that they actually need to allow teams to have deeper rosters. If you're going to start adding games into the schedule, you're going to have more injuries. And so I think that you should be allowed to have a handful more guys on the roster so that when you get decimated by injuries like the Lions are, you're not trying to go pluck people off of the couch. You have backup people already set and ready to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Or at least like, you know, maybe like create like a two-way contract situation or something, you know, like you know, you don't get penalized or whatever. You have the ability to like move players up and down off the roster without having to like send them back out to waivers or something, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I think I like something like that a little better where it's kind of like a, you know, a practice squad or something like that.
Like a taxi squad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we'll jump to my matchup with Alex. I wasn't worried about this matchup at all. Alex's team got real hurt at the end there. So he wasn't really putting up much of a fight, unfortunately for him. So I really didn't pay attention last week because I was like, I don't know, if I lose to Alex, I fuck myself, I guess.
Yeah, he doesn't know ball.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had lost, I would have just I don't know, I might have quit altogether. But yeah, seventh place matchup was actually a good one. Matt pulled it off against Adrian. It was a really close matchup, and they actually both put up good scores. So well done, fellas. Any comments on that matchup there?
No, I wasn't really paying attention. I was grumbly about not being anywhere. You know, I should consider quitting because I lost to Alex. So
it's fair.
But no, I mean, good job, Matt, getting that extra third round pick. It seems to be an every other year thing, tradition at this point, but it can be super useful. So
yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I was full 100% focused in on my matchup, so
makes sense.
To see what everyone else is doing.
Yep, makes sense. But yes, as a note, and I'm going to put this out there to everyone again, Matt as the 14th pick in the third round, Coulter as the 13th pick in the third round. There is no way to do this in the sleeper platform. So we have to manually pause the draft and make sure that they're able to make their picks. We are not skipping them this year. If we skip them this year, I will literally blow up fourth and fifth round and we will start over. I'm not carrying this into a new season. So I think the solution, though, that I've come up with is I'm going to force a timeout once we finish a round. So once we finish round one, whatever time that is, we're done for the day on drafting. And we'll basically at least take 5 days to do a draft.
I think that would be good. I know some people like to rush through it, but we've got it's a rookie draft, so you know what else. It's not like the season gets started anytime soon. But I think that'd be better for trading too, because then there's been definitely times where I'm trying to get a trade through, and it'll be like on 1/7's picking, and then by the time I type it out and send it out, it's already moved to like 1/12, and you know, it's like some people just draft like or not even like stopping to think or open to trades. So I think having that pause will give more time for people to kind of work trades, whether it's for picks or players that have already been drafted. They just want that player that got taken. So I'm in support of that.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to mandate that we have a 5-day draft at the very least. And we just do round one as long as that takes. Take a break. So if we finish at 8 o'clock, we'll just start the next morning at 10 a.m. You know, so that's how we'll work it out. But like if we get through round one and we take our normal break at, 10 o'clock at night Eastern time or 11 o'clock, whatever we did Eastern time, and we're only on pick number 7, well, we'll just have our overnight break. And then if we finish at noon the next day, I'll still mandate a pause from noon until the next day at 10 o'clock. That way we just have a fixed break in between each round. And that way, come round 3, we can also make sure we're pausing so that Coulter and Matt can make their extra picks.
Yep. Sounds good.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So real quick, I know I'm going to switch the order of this, fellas. So just to kind of put a wrap on 2024 here, for fantasy perspective anyways, for us as owners, I posted this, I think, in the chat, but the winnings that are expected here, just make sure you're taking a look at that. I posted the high scores, but I'm manually entering that and manually doing this part. So if you guys see an error, please let me know ASAP before Ryan goes out there and pays everybody. But it's going to be for the winnings. Bo, you get 300 for first place. Corey gets 150 for second. And I get 65 for third. For high score, I'm getting $20. Greg, you're getting $5. Bo, you're getting $20. Coulter's getting $5. Corey's getting 15. And Adrian's getting 5.
Then Alex is getting 10 and Robbie's getting 5.
Down at the bottom. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then Alex is getting 10 and Robbie's getting 5. Thanks, Greg. That was cut off on my sheet. So yeah, I think that this is also a good time for us to take a pause here for your thoughts, gentlemen, on increasing the dues. I kind of started that conversation, but I'm going to make an official voting post on that coming up. But we're kind of floating out $75 or $100. Bo floated out the idea of doing what'd you say, $117?
Yeah, something similar to that. Didn't have to be exact, but instead of trying to do the math and taking some of it out of the pot, just have however much we want for the weekly high score be its own number, and then have the pot be its own number, and then we just combine, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do. It's basically what we did was we calculated everything. We did $5 a week for the high score. And then we were like, okay, what's left over? We want to give first place the majority of that, second place half of that, and then third place what's remaining is kind of how we calculated it out. So if we raise the fee, whether that's to $75 or $100, do we want to increase weekly high score? Or do we like $5?
No, go ahead.
If anything, I was gonna say, if anything, I would only increase it by another 5, maybe make it 10. But $10. I think making the pots bigger, the end game, would be the more appealing thing in my opinion.
Yeah, I would keep it at 5, honestly. But I'm not tied to that. We can vote on it. If people want 10, that's fine. But I think increasing the pot would be great. I mean, obviously, someone who's won 4 times. Now, of course, we increase the pot, and I probably won't win again. But that's fine. I can't complain.
Yeah, so the other idea that I had, and I think that this would work really well if we did $100, or if we did 75 and then just said, okay, we're also allocating X number of dollars for what I'm about to go into. But I think having some sort of trophy would be a good idea. And I'm in favor of championship rings over a trophy. And I like rings because they're a little bit easier to just have around your house. You don't have to have a massive trophy hidden away somewhere. A belt would work too, just like rings do. But then also rings can be a little bit more personal. Bo, you could choose which ring you wanted, and then now you've got 4 rings, to choose from. We're probably not going to go back in time and give you all 4 rings, but, if we had done this in the past, you could get 4 completely different rings as opposed to just holding on to the same trophy every year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to that. If we were going to do some sort of physical thing, I would prefer the rings over the trophy, I think. But I think an argument could also be made, paying a one-time fee to go to the trophy and then having more money towards a pot versus obviously we did the rings, having money coming out each year. So I think that's like the argument to kind of think about is, do we want money coming out each year for that? Or do we want just like a one-time fee, put it towards the trophy, and then increase the pot? I mean, I think going back to kind of the original question, most everyone, I believe, that's come on the podcast, and if you haven't, fix that, has said that this is their favorite league. And so I would hope that everyone would be willing to increase the payouts here, since I think we all put a lot of hard work into it.
Yeah,
If-
the devil's advocate to that, there's a couple, so I'm in favor of it, but again, I'm not aware of everybody's financial situation. So having a $100 subscription to a service that your team might not be competitive for 3 to 5 years is a lot of money to dump into without getting
Yeah.
anything back other than entertainment. So I also don't want to make this cost prohibitive for people.
Well, and I was going to say kind of on that point too, where like, let's say we did a trophy, right? Like one year we buy something, whatever it is, a belt or an actual like trophy to send back and forth, all that.
Yeah.
It's going to come down to the person who won it last to send it to the person who just won it, because we don't all live near each other. So I would then push forward a discussion that we do in fact take money out of the pot every year and make it so that the league covers the shipping cost, not the person who won, just
Yeah, I
in case it's,
Yeah,
like,
I would agree with
just in case it's a lot.
it also just makes it so that you're not like, hey, I'm really sorry I get paid Friday, let me send it then, kind of thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's, hey, let us know how much it is and we can reimburse you, or if you need, we can, Venmo you the money from the league to get it sent out. So
Yeah.
I definitely second the shipping cost. I don't think anyone the point of this would be to make it more fun, not make it more complicated
Yes.
on
Agreed.
anyone.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
yeah, as far as the financial aspect, obviously that's all with the assumption that everyone is in a strong enough financial place to increase the dues. And if it's not, then I agree. I wouldn't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable, or if they're like, oh, 11 people want to do it and I'm the only one person that
Yeah.
doesn't want to do it. Like, I still feel like that's unfair, because
yeah,
the whole point of this should be fun, and $50 is already like a significant amount of money, especially if you're
In
not
multiple
making that much.
leagues and
Yeah.
you're not winning. And like I said, I don't want this to become prohibitive for people. So yeah, we'll discuss more, but yeah, I appreciate you guys' thoughts on that. Cause yeah, I always want to, like you said, Bo, we all put in a lot of time and effort into this, so that I want there to be some lucrative and honor in winning this league. So I love the idea of a trophy, or like I said, I'm in favor of putting, because rings aren't that much. Rings are $50 to $80. So it wouldn't be that much from the pot that we'd be pulling to get a ring every year.
Yeah.
But I think that only works if we're all comfortable with just saying, hey, whatever we are going to do for our prize pool, we're also going to pay for a ring every year. And that's just going to be something, once we have the final cost of the ring, we'll split it up from there, rather than complicated and have all the winnings broken down and the ring comes out to be $78.32. So who gets the change?
Yeah,
I don't
I
want to
think
deal with all
too,
that nonsense.
I would say that would be I'm assuming this was implied, but we would only do a trophy or a ring or something similar to that if we were to increase the dues every year. Like, if we're keeping it at 50, then
We would keep it at, so we would keep it at 50. So in my mind, there's two separate components to this.
Yeah.
There might be three separate components here. So this might be a series of polls after a quick discussion. But it's, on one hand, do we want to increase league dues? And do we
Right.
want to do that to $75 or $100? And then from there, how do we want to allocate those league dues? And then there's a separate discussion of, do we want a trophy? And do we want this to be a trophy, a belt, or an annual ring that we send out to the winner?
Right.
And then if it's the ring option that gets chosen, then it's a trickle down of, do we take it out of the prize pool, or do we just have a separate, we have our $50, $75, or $100 prize pool, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, regardless of whether we increase the league dues, regardless of that, if we choose to also do the ring, that then just becomes an extra expense for the league as a whole. So we split that divided by 12 ways. So it's going to be like an extra $6 for everybody.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I think it's if we keep it at 50, but we choose to do a ring, then we also are choosing to accept the added cost every year. Whereas if we choose to do a trophy or a belt, we are just accepting shipping costs every year and one-time increased league dues to get the trophy or belt done.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Cool. All right, a little bit of exercise here before we take a quick break for you. Contenders, pretenders, and rebuilders. I put some notes in here, but I think this was Ryan's idea in the chat. And maybe Brian said a couple of these too. But idea of trying to predict what's going to happen in 2025. So we'll have 4 categories here. Top 3 teams in 2025, bottom 3 teams in 2025, most likely to improve in 2025, and most likely to start a rebuild in 2025. So I'll jump in. So top 3 in 2025. In no particular order, myself, Bo, and I think Rob gets up there next year.
Yeah, I mean, those sound good to me. Like Corey could make another push as well, so he could be in there. But
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, all of you guys have pretty strong teams in terms of good combination of youth and, veteran like talent. So
Yeah, I was gonna say the only change I would make to that is me, Mark, Corey is what I had, but I think as we've seen, that's the competitors this year are all it's been pretty competitive. So I
Yeah.
think that there's not an easy like, oh, this is 100% going to be the top 3. I think you could swap a lot of those names out, and injuries always happen too. So I think you swap a lot of those names out, and it would be pretty possible. It would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Cool. What about bottom 3 next year? Who you guys got for your bottom 3?
I think that your bottom 3 that you have in here is pretty accurate. I say Brian and you have Ryan, Brian, and Alex. I think that Ryan and Brian stay down there, but are like by the end of the year on an obviously clear path to like move forward. Whereas like I think Alex is kind of in one of those weird positions where he traded so much that for like stopgap fill the like next man up type players that I don't know that there's a lot of longevity in some of the players that he acquired. Like, Jordan Mason being a prime example of like, we don't know what he's going to be next year. You know what I mean? And that was
probably nothing.
So like, I think Alex has a lot of those. So I think he's going to be down there as well. I don't know. I could see myself ending up down there too.
So I thought about putting you down there, Greg, but and I'll jump ahead here to most likely to start a rebuild, because I think we're going to talk about you and Alex here, because I think you and Alex are the most likely teams to start a rebuild next year or this offseason. But I think that to your point, and like you just said, it's one of those things where who has the assets to turn their team around. And Alex has Aaron Rodgers, who's borderline useless, Derek Carr, who's borderline useless, Joe Flacco, who's borderline useless, and then Jordan Love, who's very useful, but are you trading him away? And then at running back, you've got an aging Alvin Kamara, an aging James Conner, an aging Kareem Hunt. You've got Jordan Mason that you're relying on. So really the only 2 running backs that I would have confidence on his team next year is David Montgomery, who had a pretty bad injury, and then Rachaad White, who we're seeing losing roles to Bucky Irving. So where's his running back potential there, and who's he selling for pieces to rebuild? So I just don't know that he has the firepower to turn around and do a quick rebuild. His rebuild will take a little bit longer, in my opinion. So I think he finds himself down if he does a proper rebuild and goes down to bare bones. Whereas your team, Greg, you still have a lot of meat on your bones, so you don't necessarily have to tear down to the nubs.
Yeah, I mean, there's players on my team that like I don't know that I'll frankly I don't want to say ever trade, but pretty close to that. But
Right.
yeah, I'm open minded. Come the off season. There's a few pieces that I'll let you know I'm not willing to trade, but hit me up. Let's do something big.
I feel like I was pretty set on Ryan and Brian in the bottom three. Ryan, obviously, making it very clear that he's shooting for 2026, not 20, right? 2026,
Yep.
not 2025.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's where all his picks are.
Yeah. And then Brian, obviously, coming in 0-14, very impressive, I guess.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was pretty clear. I was having trouble trying to figure out that last one, but I think you convinced me with that back and forth with Alex being in there, like looking over his roster again. Because at first I was like, it's not like horrible, but I do think age is a big factor there. There's a lot of like older players. And yeah, I mean, if I had to pick a third one, everyone else is kind of either like definitely competitive or in that middle ground where I'm like, like it wouldn't take that many changes to kind of flip that team around into like a really strong team. So to answer that question, I think I'd have to stick with Ryan, Brian, Alex too. And then to go over to the rebuild, I feel like you're not going to put, I mean, ideally, I'm assuming, depends on what happens. I don't think you'd put Mark, Corey, myself in a rebuild. I don't think you'd really put Rob in a rebuild either. So that already takes out like 4 of the teams. Ryan, we know, is already trying to rebuild.
In one.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Brian, just because he's definitely not competing. So I don't know what his plan is there. Adrian's kind of that stuck in the middle team. And then you've got Matt and Coulter, honestly, who could very well be competitors next year. Like both Coulter, I feel so bad for. His team is very good. And
his team's so confusing.
Yeah, his team's good, and he just had like shit luck. And Brian, obviously, we've been seen putting up post 200 games over the past like 6 weeks. So it's kind of like order of elimination there. Greg, I also think your team's very good, but you do have a mixture of like youth and aging pieces there. So I could see why Mark would put you in that rebuild. I mean, I feel like probably, like I said, Brian, and then Brian, potentially Adrian or Greg would be really the only teams I would say most
Adrian
likely
would be a good one.
to start a rebuild, taking out teams that are already rebuilding.
Yeah, Adrian would be up there, except I don't think Adrian has the mental capacity. Motivation.
Yeah, the motivation. Yeah, I'm just looking based off roster, like in a vacuum, not taking personalities into it. But yes, I can see that for sure. Well, Adrian, if you don't have the motivation, you want to trade me some picks or players, hit me up. I'll take that load off you. Don't worry.
Yeah, I need some picks, so hit me up. Yeah, I hope to get a couple trades done and get into this draft. There's a couple players that I'm ready to move off of, so I'm hoping to get into this draft.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be fun to see. I always think trades during the offseason are very interesting because sometimes it's crazy. You trade for this player and you're like, oh, I'm really excited for them. And then training camp hits and they're injured. And like, you get, sometimes you get it where it's like, all right, they're out for the whole year. You're like, fuck, I just like traded away all the stuff for them and they did nothing for me. So it, obviously, that could happen during the year too. But I think off-season trades are very telling versus in-season trades. You're more like, immediate need. Like, what do I need? Oh, our wide receiver went down. I need to replace that. Running back down. Versus off-season, it's more like the stepping stones to try and build your team in the right direction or get ready for the draft.
At least in my view of how I approach things, I'm trying to find arbitrage. I'm trying to find players that are valued less because they had a down year, or they got hurt, or they switched teams, or whatever the narrative is. I'm trying to find those players to purchase before it becomes an emergency or before they show me that I'm right. So it's a lot of gamble taking. It's a lot of calling your shots in the offseason.
Yeah, and then the other way around, of course, let's say you have a player where you're like, oh, they ended really well, and you feel like everyone's going to be high on them, but you don't think they're going to repeat the following year, trying to dump them off, or dump off people before the draft. Because sometimes you're like, all right, this is a stud receiver, and then let's say, you know, another stud receiver gets taken, and all of a sudden they're not the number one wide receiver on the team anymore, and then all that value just drops. So a lot of predicting and trying to figure out who's gonna go where.
Yeah, for sure. All right, gentlemen, we will take a break here. We will be right back with everybody. Thanks for staying with us. All right, everybody, welcome back in. Thank you for allowing us to take that break. I'm assuming you took a break as well, because that was a long one. We normally take a break, like 30 to 40 minutes into the podcast, so apologize, but I did warn you that it was going to be a long one today. How are you both doing? How are you feeling? You got the energy to finish this thing?
Yeah, I can muster.
All right, good.
Yeah, I guess obviously it's a little later here for me, so I just cracked open a beer, so I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
You think time matters for that on a vacation day?
I've been drinking this whole podcast.
I have to work all week, so, and I have a child, so vacation time is very different for me than it is for you guys.
Yes, fair. All right, we're going to jump into kind of a repeat of what we did a few weeks ago, but kind of put a stamp on the end of the year. I expanded it. Instead of just talking about top 10, we're going to go into the offensive positions, top 12 finishes. My hope here, gentlemen, is that we just have a good conversation around, surprises. I don't necessarily need to focus just on the top 12. If there's somebody that finished outside of the top 12 that you're surprised didn't finish into the top 12, that's a good commentary to talk about here. So really just want to kind of put a stamp on the end of the year, look back and say who helped win championships for people in redraft, who surprised, who disappointed, things of that nature. So I'll start with top 12 quarterbacks, and we'll start there. So number 1 to 12, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold, Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes, Bo Nix, Brock Purdy, and Kyler Murray, rounding out that top 12. I will also point out, and I did this just for the first one, Lamar Jackson outscored Joe Burrow by about 44 fantasy points. So I'll be highlighting that for each position. But yeah, so there's a 44-point gap between the first and second place finish at quarterback. Anybody you guys want to call out? Anything you guys are dying to talk about here with the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. No, you go ahead first, Greg. No, go ahead.
Okay. So I want to point out that like Sam Darnold being in this list is pretty like amazing. Obviously, if you look at the team he has around him, like, he has Justin Jefferson, he has DJ Hawkinson, he has, Jordan Addison is coming at it, showing that he's a pretty reliable receiver. So like he has a really good team around him. Plus, I think Aaron Jones has kind of found a really good, I mentioned this earlier in the season, we were talking about it, but like I think Aaron Jones fits into the system perfectly. And he's just continuing to do what he was doing with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. You know what I mean? Being a relief valve for this offense. But I want to give him his dues. Sam Darnold has looked really, really good this season. And it hasn't just seemed like a flash in the pan type thing. I mean, I guess like flash in the pan for the sake that this season's different than all the rest of his other seasons. But like, it's not like he looked good at the beginning of the season, but he's definitely tailed off a little bit at the end. Like, the only stumble I felt like he had this season was kind of coming out of the bye week, and then they got their footing again pretty quickly. And then another one I just wanted to point out was that So Joe Burrow being number 2 is like, when you look at his stats, obviously, like, it's not surprising, but like Cincinnati has just been like in this weird, like, kind of free fall from the beginning of the season. And the fact that, you see these stats and he's number 4 doesn't feel representative of what that team has been this season. So like
2, you mean?
Or sorry, number 2. Yeah. He's number 2. The fact that like, Cincinnati's just been basically competing for last place in their division so far this season, like, feels like a weird like disconnect, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like Joe Burrow is like so good, in the way that team has let him down and the coaching has let him down is just
Crazy.
completely atrocious. I mean, the fact that they're like, we were talking like halfway through the season about like, oh, they're going to be out of the playoffs and this and that, and if they lose this game, they're out. And they're fighting for the playoffs right now, and it's literally all because of him. I mean, he is just. I mean, obviously he's got Chase and Higgins, but he has willed his way to get that team where they are, and it's an atrocity at what they've done around them.
Yeah, it's really wild how bad that team is.
He's had a career year this year.
Yeah,
like it's the most yards he's ever
conversation.
It's the most yards he's ever thrown. It's by far the most touchdowns he's ever thrown. It's the most completions he's ever thrown. It's the most he's ever thrown, period. Well, tied, I guess. But he's also like only like a 0.25% off from his career high like completion percentage. And you know what I mean? Like, he's crushing it this year. So
yeah, like I said, he should be in the conversation for MVP. But the rest of the team, particularly the defense and the coaching and the decisions that they've made, you can't give him the MVP because they're just a bad team.
Right. You can't give MVP to a team that's like, what are they, like 5 and something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, no. I mean, he should be in discussion, but yeah, you can't give it to him just because he hasn't willed it enough to where he's been able to flip the whole script of the team, but he's gotten pretty damn close.
Right.
I'll just say in general, before we break down the QBs, I love looking at like the top 12, top 24 of all these positions. I do it every couple of weeks. I go in the app and just play around and see like, because sometimes you'll see names and I'll be like, oh, I didn't expect them to be up there. And then you start looking at trades, this and that. So I'm definitely glad you added this segment. With that being said, Baker for me was like a big surprise. Not a surprise because I've been following this year, but at the beginning of the year, I would not have expected him to be in the top 12. We talked about him earlier, about how much he's carried that team, but that's crazy. Not only is he like, it's not like he's 12 or 11 though, he's number 4. So that's crazy. Yeah. I think Sam Darnold being on here is surprising, and I think Pat Mahomes being that low is surprising, but at the same time, even if someone would say like, oh, he's on the decline, he's going down, if he had like what I think is an objectively really poor year and he's still able to finish number 9, like if that's his floor, then I still think that is saying something to like how good of a quarterback he is and how good of a dynasty prospect he is.
He's the best in the league, Doug.
I mean, paying the refs off helps too, but
that's fair.
Yeah,
that is fair. Yeah, I don't want to belabor Baker a little bit more than I already have, but the only other person that I'll call out is Bo Nix. I definitely didn't see Bo Nix taken top 10 as a quarterback. I was really down on Bo Nix coming into the season. All the hype about him, being the next Drew Brees is like, get the fuck out of here. But he has actually been really good for the team. I mean, He makes good plays with his legs occasionally, so I definitely have come around and turned around on Bo Nix. So, yeah, I was very surprised to see him as a top 10 quarterback.
I just also want to point out, he's a rookie, but Jaden Daniels looks great. As a player, as a fantasy asset, he was kind of one of the other guys talking about quarterbacks and stuff. And then it came down to kind of him and Jaden. It was him and Caleb at the draft. But yeah, I don't know. Jaden Daniels just looks like he was ready You know what I mean? So
I mean, yeah, he's phenomenal. And didn't they say like Washington hasn't been in the playoffs for what, like 20 years or something like that? Am I making that up? Or did you guys hear
Dan's
that?
Sounds about right.
Dan Snyder, as the owner, never had an 11-win season with the Commanders, and it took the new owner the first season to have 11 wins.
That's crazy. That is crazy. He is so good. He's so good.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of it. You mentioned you have in here in our notes, you have a trade that kind of happened involving Josh Allen, and I guess Bo Nix would kind of be the other major part of this like trade. And how like looking back on this trade, like it's, you know, it's definitely like a right now for, you know, I'm trading right now for the future kind of thing, and I'm trading the future for right now on the other direction. But like, yeah, like I don't know, it's good. Like this wasn't a bad trade for either person. You know what I mean?
No,
It's interesting.
This was a really healthy trade. So to go over the trade, since everybody listening can't see it, it was between Matt and Anthony. This took place in August, and Anthony sent Josh Allen and Noah Gray. Is that his name?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. So Noah Gray and Josh Allen and Anthony got George Pickens, Bo Nix, Ben Sennett, and a first round pick from Matt in 2025. And so I think that this is a really fair and equal trade. I think when I initially saw this trade go through, I was really surprised that Anthony had sold what I felt was low on Josh Allen. But looking back on it and everything I just said, it was really kind of a buy low on Bo Nix.
Yeah, he didn't get to he didn't get to draft him, so he instead basically like said, you know what, I'm punting like my immediate for what I think will be a long-term option for me. So
Yeah.
And it was a good call on his part.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, to round out, actually, before we jump into that, anybody that finished outside of the top 12 that you were surprised by?
Kirk Cousins
Yeah,
finished 20th this year.
he's lucky he did even that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say surprised, but just a couple notable names. Herbert at 13. You've got
Herbert at 13 surprises me because I was expecting a much worse year out of him, which is why I traded him away.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I'm just saying that's like a very popular quarterback in Dynasty, and it wasn't that long ago where he was supposed to be like a top 5 Dynasty aspect, which just shows you that obviously the ebb and flow there. CJ Stroud at 19, you know, after the year he had last year, those were the really like the two names that kind of stood out to me as not like super surprising, but kind of like notable, like, makes you kind of think a little bit, I guess.
Russell Wilson finishing quarterback 23 and only playing half a season is, considering what he did last year, is kind of like interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I'm really curious as to what happens there because they only brought him on because he represented a vet minimum quarterback that they could utilize this season. So, like, do they pay him next year? And, like, what does that contract look like at 37 years old?
Who knows?
Okay, so to round out quarterbacks, most likely to not finish in the top 12 next season. So out of the top 12 from 2024, who do you think doesn't finish in the top 12? I will go first since you guys both have the same one, so I'll give you the floor there. I'm going to go spicy. I don't think that we saw the floor of Pat Mahomes, and I think Pat Mahomes does not finish in the top 12 next season. I don't see Travis Kelce coming back, regardless of whether they win the Super Bowl. You're relying then on Xavier Worthy, who has shown that he has speed, but that's about it. You're relying on Rashee Rice coming back and being healthy right away. And then you're relying on a Noah Gray, and then I forget the other guy's name there, the other tight end there. So I don't think they have the weapons to support it. And I think they went into this year hoping that they could run the ball a lot more with Isaiah Pacheco. And so I think that they do that next season and they run the ball a lot more than putting the game in Pat Mahomes' hands.
That I don't know. I just can't. I don't see it. That feels more of like a hope and a prayer. So I'm going to speak it into existence kind of hot take to me. I would love to see it happen, but he's still Pat Mahomes. He shoots real good.
I shoot real good.
I mean, I feel like, to be fair, you did preface it with that was a spicy take, but with that being
it's spicy.
said, yeah, I think it's not crazy, but I just think that if I think this year was more of like a floor year. I'm not saying he's going to go back to being a top 5 next year. I do agree. After Hill left, there was a dramatic loss in passing volume and fantasy points, and Kelsey is getting older and may or may not be there next year. But Noah Gray's actually been pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think he can definitely fit into that role. I think Xavier Worthy, after having a year under his belt, is really going to step up. I think Rice, it just depends on how he comes after the injury.
Yeah.
Again, not saying he's going to shoot up the board, but I think he can stay steady right around that like 8 to 12 range.
Yeah. So I think I'm making that spicy call in saying that those things that all have to go well don't all go well, or at least don't all go well until like the end of the season. You know, you're relying on guys in their first and second year to do everything for you. So that takes time to gel as opposed to handing the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco and just letting him get 5 yards of a run.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair call to make. I don't think it's like crazy or anything like that. But yeah, as a Mahomes owner, I hope that's not the case, but we will see.
Oh, I wouldn't, if I were you as a Mahomes owner, let's say I'm right, and we see I don't think that Pat Mahomes disappears. I think Justin Herbert is his floor. You know, weeks where he can get 30 points for you, but he can also get you 8 because he hands the ball off 35 times. And so like that is in the realm of possibilities in my mind. But as a Pat Mahomes owner, I wouldn't be selling him for anything less than a top 8 quarterback.
Yes, and let me
or I'm just holding on to him.
I am not inviting a buy low opportunity. If
No, there's no buy low opportunity.
I'll be always listening. But I'm looking at his games right now. The lowest game he had was against San Francisco week 7, which was 12 points. Otherwise, 16, 16, 20, 15, 13, 12, 22, 30, 18. So it's like even his bad games are like good or decent games for like, you know, a QB2 or a QB3. But yeah, I think you make a valid point. I think it's definitely within the realm of possibility. But again, either everything has to go bad or everything has to go good. But yeah.
And much more realistically, it's somewhere in between, and he probably finishes number 9 again.
Yeah, I think somewhere in that range. I think somewhere in the like 7 to 12 range is probably more realistic. I don't think unless they make a crazy trade, he goes back up in the top 5.
Yeah.
But I also don't think he goes to like QB like 15 or 16 or anything like that.
Yeah, agreed. All right, shall we move on?
Just to be clear, the person that Bo and I both picked for person to make it in the top 12 next season was Sam Darnold.
Yeah, give you the floor. Go for it.
He had an incredible season, but I think we all understand what's going to happen next year with JJ McCarthy coming back.
I don't so.
You don't think so? You think they trade JJ McCarthy?
No.
You just think that they keep Sam Darnold?
Yep. Sign him to a 2-year deal.
I think Sam Darnold goes and gets a contract somewhere else.
Maybe, but
because he only signed a 1-year deal. Yeah, but he only signed a 1-year deal this year, so he is a free agent at the end of the season. And I'm curious to see if he ends up back on the Vikings.
I think that Sam Darnold knows that he likes this system and he has the best wide receiver in the league. So why move away from what has worked for you and is getting you that contract? Understand where you are in your career and where the organization is and sign an appropriate contract to prove that you can continue to do this and then go sign a big contract somewhere else to finish your career. Because he's what, 32?
I'm not sure, but I would argue to say that they don't have his age.
He's
here.
only 27.
Oh, shit. Yeah. So go sign a 2-year deal with Minnesota.
Oh,
Unless
yeah.
somebody gives you like a monster contract, but I doubt anybody does.
Where did I put this? I feel like
he's only 27.
Yeah, Greg. Well, sorry. While you're looking for those notes, I was just gonna say he's only 27. I do think he stays with Minnesota because coming off the injury, I don't know if McCarthy's ready to jump into a starting role. I'm not saying he drops out because he declines in value. I just think there is a lot of borderline top 12 QBs that could have some things go right and bump him down. But again, he's got Justin Jefferson, when the greatest wide receiver. Why would you ever trade him away? So
who would ever do such a thing?
Yeah, who would do something that crazy? So he's definitely got the tools around him to remain up there. I'm not saying that he plummets. I just think that other people kind of sneak in, and he's one of those borderline like top 15, top 20 QBs, just not top 12.
Okay, so fun fact, Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield were both drafted ahead of Josh Allen in the 2018 draft.
Yes,
so those
sir.
three guys were drafted in the same year. And it feels like we're just watching Josh Allen come into his fucking prime, and the other two have had like a whole ass career by now.
I think they were counted out. So like their resurgence is like,
they both have been in at least
you've been around here for a long time and you've been on 17 teams. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. They both played for Carolina. In fact, Sam Darnold started, looked not great. Then they brought in Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield got released, and then Sam Darnold finished the season. And we're learning that that's just a trash organization. But I don't know. I think that the thing with Sam Darnold is like here's like a wild ass take, okay? I think that what you could see is Kirk Cousins re-signs because he'll be released from the Falcons. Kirk Cousins re-signs to the Vikings for a vet minimum contract. He starts the season if JJ McCarthy isn't healthy, but it gives them an obvious and clear path to have JJ McCarthy step in when he's ready to take over. And Kirk Cousins will be serviceable enough. He knows the offense. He knows the system that he can at least get them a win or two at the beginning of the season. I think Sam Darnold goes and takes his shot somewhere else. I could see him back with the Jets unless he feels like he's burned a bridge there. I don't know. I just think that I understand, and I think you make a lot of sense, but like it just feels like Minnesota's, depending on how they do in the offseason, or not the offseason, the postseason this year, I think they feel like their hands are tied right now. So I'd be curious to see how they just kind of handle the whole thing, I guess. But
yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen that meme, but there's that meme of like the Carolina Panthers with Baker and Sam Darnold, and they're like at one point they had both of these QBs on their roster. And
they fucked it up.
They're like, yep, they suck.
It is real rough. All right, now shall we move on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to jump to running backs or wide receivers?
We can do running backs because that's kind of next on the list.
Let's do running backs.
Top 12 running backs. We've got Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Kyren Williams, Devon Achane, James Cook, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Chase Brown, and Joe Mixon.
I have 3 of these guys.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, you do.
Remember when everybody laughed at you for sending a first-round pick to Rob for Achane?
Yeah, and he's worked out 2 years in a row. To kind of bounce off of that, Devon Achane would be my thing that I want to point out here. I do find it, frankly, a little surprising, considering the type of player that he looks to be. He's like a shifty, quick guy, and I know that that's kind of Miami's offense as a whole, is just move the ball as fast as possible. But they leaned on him quite a bit. Like he got a lot of runs, he got a lot of utilization in their team on screen plays. So running through the air, to say it, like it just doesn't feel like he's the type of guy that you lean on, and they definitely tried to do that with him, and he didn't come out like knock on wood, hasn't gotten any like injuries or serious injuries that have been of any concern, and he just seems to kind of keep it chugging every week. So very impressed with Devon Achane.
Yeah, he's very good. His problem is health because he is a smaller back. So his problem, his whole career, is just going to be he's one awkward hit away from getting injured and missing 2 weeks because he's just going to take a beating. So that's the risk with Achane for sure. But otherwise, when he's on the field, he's electric.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, after last year's performance, I'm not super surprised to see him on there. And like you kind of said, with all the troubles that Miami's had with the Tua injury and Hill kind of fighting that wrist injury all year, there were points to be had. He stepped into the role. He's done great.
Yeah. The person I'll call out in the top 12 is Alvin Kamara. I was not expecting this. I was expecting Kamara to have a down year. He is 29. He was very inefficient last year and relied on touchdowns. I expected the Saints to be very bad, and I expected, oh man, his name is escaping me.
Derek Carr?
Tajay Spears. Kendre Miller.
Yeah, Kendre Miller to take a step forward. Thank you for the name, Bo. Yeah, I was expecting Kendre Miller to be more involved in the passing game as well, to take away from some of the work that Kamara got. But that really wasn't the case. And Kamara did miss a couple of games, but it was consistent throughout the year. He had that one monster game where he scored half of his fantasy points in 1 week. But
5 touchdowns, right?
Yeah. That was the week against me. Fuck you, Alex. The whole thing would have been different without Alvin Kamara going off that week. Stupid bitch.
Whoa.
I mean, you still would have lost.
I lost to Alex. Maybe not. I might have had a higher seed.
Yeah, maybe.
Reseeding would have been different.
Oh, well.
But yeah, he was a big surprise for me. I was not expecting it. And spoiler alert, he's my pick to be out of the top 12 next year.
Yeah, that would be my biggest surprise on there too. Honestly, like I feel like with the quarterbacks, you get like, oh, there's a couple names. You're like, yeah, I could see that. The running backs all to me are pretty solid. Like no one on there. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe they made it on there except for Kamara. Like he relatively is not old, but for running back, he is old. And I wouldn't even expect him to be top 24, honestly, this year. Like I was expecting like a flex RB3 role. So yeah, I mean, I just very, very surprised that he had the season he did. And especially after that breakout game, I was like, oh, surely he'll drop off and then he'll kind of like fizzle out. And hasn't had a game that big, but he's stayed consistent enough to end up number 9. So that to me is very surprising.
I just feel like with like 26 being like the age, like the peak gap for like running backs historically, 29 isn't like that. Like he should be, this is probably his last year of production. Like I would try and get off of him, but like, I don't know. It just feels like he's not that old. He's just been around and doing it so well for so long that that feels like he has a lot more mileage on him. But Derrick Henry's 30.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he turns 31 in 3 days. So like good running backs in a system that works for them, I think can still be good as long as they stay physically fit. And Alvin Kamara seems to be that guy. So
the difference for me, and I think it is here in a gap from 2 to 9. I don't know what the point differential is, but I bet you it's a lot. Oh yeah, I'll just say this: Saquon Barkley outscored Derrick Henry by 43 points. So as good of a season as Derrick Henry had, he was outscored by 43 by Saquon, which is pretty crazy. But what I was going to say is, I think the big difference is that Derrick Henry is an all-timer, and I don't think Alvin Kamara is an all-timer. And I think all-timers are the exception to the age rule. I expect Derrick Henry probably not to be number 2 next year, but I expect Derrick Henry to have another good season with Baltimore next year. He's an all-timer, so I expect him to go out when he feels ready to go out, but until then, he'll be a useful asset on the field. I don't believe that about Alvin Kamara.
Well, the impressive thing about Henry, too, is if you look at their, stats, Henry had, little to no, receiving yards at all. And a lot of Kamara's fantasy production came from receiving. So whether it's if it was a standard league, that would make a difference versus PPR. And also, I think, the lack of receiving options in New Orleans / the poor to moderate quarterback play makes a difference there as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so then let me ask you guys this question. Player's the same age. He is a player that also relies a little bit on, receptions and things.
Same age as Alvin Kamara?
Yeah.
Okay.
But how come we don't and I picked them to not be in the top 12? How come James Conner is not your pick to fall out of the top 12?
I was going to mention James Conner. I was surprised James Conner is in the top 10. Absolutely, he's a surprise. Less of a surprise than Alvin Kamara for me, because when you look at the stats last year, Alvin Kamara was really inefficient. I don't remember the numbers, but he had one of his worst years on the ground, and he relied on touchdowns and catching the ball on dump offs from Derek Carr. So
yeah,
I expected that part of the game to change with Kendre Miller being more involved and Chris Olave taking a step forward. James Conner, I expected to get injured, because he always does. And I also expected Trey Benson to step up halfway through the season and start taking work away as well as a spelling back. And that never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more from Trey Benson, and I agree. Connor, yeah, to your point, Mark and Greg, yes, I didn't list Connor on there because I was just sticking with one name, but that would be in the same conversation as Kamara. Kamara, I'm more surprised about, but Connor is not a name where I'm like, oh, I really expected him to do really well. That's another surprising standout name to me, just due to age, injury, and the opportunity again. Trey Benson, I expected to produce way more than he did. So that was disappointing. But yeah, I would put James Conner in that same conversation with Kamara for the same points. Just age, lack of production as age goes up. I just didn't expect that to match up.
Yeah.
I mean, props to him for making it.
Yeah, and to your point, Greg, I was going to mention James Conner as a surprise there. I do think in terms of tiers of all-timers, I do think Alvin Kamara is way better from a holistic point of view than James Conner is. I just think that the skill set, or I thought the skill set, was going to be eaten into for Alvin Kamara much faster and sooner than for James Conner. So seeing James Conner in the way that the season developed was less surprising to me than Alvin Kamara's season.
Okay, that's fair. I also just want to point out real quick that based off of the hype at the beginning of the season, Kenneth Walker finishing in 26th is a pretty big disappointment.
He got hurt a lot, though.
I know, but it was one of those where everybody was like, Kenneth Walker, that's a for sure thing. And 26th is, if he was your guy, he was probably a RB2 for you realistically, and that's a huge disappointment. So
the last one that I'll call out, I'm really curious your thoughts on him, Chase Brown. I'll put in here a trade that happened with Chase Brown. I'm mildly surprised by Chase Brown being at number 11. I was expecting Chase Brown to be a solid running back too, but he took over the role much sooner, and I think it was because of injury, right? I mean, then he just never let it go, or Zach Moss was out all season or something like that.
Yeah,
that
Zach Moss
sooner than I was expecting it to happen, so that's why he's up here. But I'm only mildly surprised because I was expecting this to happen. And that's why when I did the trade with Anthony, a lot of people kind of looked sideways at it because at the time Chase Brown was a no-name rookie. But I was looking at him as I'm giving up a future running back too here at the age of 24 years old. So instead, Anthony, I think, stole this trade and got an RB1 instead of an RB2 out of it.
Damn, those magazines are pretty good at predicting rookies, apparently.
But that trade, I'm curious to hear your thoughts not only on Chase Brown, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the trade looking back at it now. So this trade happened back in September. I got Jahmyr Gibbs, and Anthony got Chase Brown, Ladd McConkey, and Ryan's first, which ended up being a top half pick. Which I also fucking expected.
It's one of those that, like, I want to just say it's probably like a fair trade considering the context of like what your teams are doing, especially now. The problem is that, like, I feel like Chase Brown could just become a Jahmyr Gibbs, and he also got Ladd McConkey and a first on top of it. So, like, I think in 2 or 3 years, this could look back and be like, damn, he got a lot for, one solid piece. But that being said, I don't think it's an unfair trade, like, from where things stand right now. Like I said, especially with the context of, like, you are going to clearly try and run it back and try and win something next year. And Anthony is in a position to take a real good step forward with a lot of really talented, promising looking young players. So I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I would say, I think a lot of trades, if it's like a rebuilding team and a competing team, someone's competing, they might say, oh, that's unfair. But if you're rebuilding, you look at it the other way. And I think that's kind of what this trade is, where, yeah, in a couple years, you're going to say Brown and McConkey are going to continue, I think, to do well. Plus, you've got a first for Gibbs. Someone might say, oh, that was a better trade. But I think that's the case in Dynasty, these younger players that continue to do well and these older players that, hit a ceiling decline. Not saying Gibbs is going to do that anytime soon, but in a vacuum, if you're just looking at it like right away, I think it was pretty fair. And honestly, with that being said, I would maybe even lean more towards the Gibbs side. I mean, let's talk about Gibbs for a second. He finished running back 3 in an amazing offense where they still have Amon-Ra getting the ball. Plus, you've got who would have been another top 12 running back if he didn't get injured, with David Montgomery. So for him to be
100%.
able to produce that high with basically another top 12 running back on the team, like, I think maybe we're not giving Gibbs enough credit there. Like, it's not.
No, I agree.
Piece. He is like a stud top running back.
He's a cornerstone for the next 3 seasons, for sure.
Yes,
exactly. I understand that. I 100% understand that. But also, theoretically, Chase Brown could develop to be that for a very potent offense as well in the Cincinnati Bengals. You know what I mean? With Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, Chase Brown and being a rookie this year still has 3 more years left before he's even looking at getting a contract signed.
Yeah.
So like, I think that, like, I'm just saying that I'm not discrediting Jahmyr Gibbs at all. I think that's an incredible piece. And especially for somebody like Mark, who's in a position to try and run it back next year and make it all the way and win something, it's going to be oh, never mind.
Yeah, which I was going to comment on, but go ahead. No, go ahead, Gary.
No. But just saying, like, in a vacuum, right? Like, it's one of those, and what I mean by looking back in like 2 years is, like, I think that ultimately, it'll be that first was probably a little too much for, like, hindsight, or, what they had done up to that point kind of thing. But, like, yeah, I think that this is, again, with the context of the teams and their positions, this is just a pretty fair trade. So
yeah, I would agree with that in the context of the teams and the positions, fair trade. And I would also agree with your last point. Looking back, you would probably say the first maybe should have been a second, and it would have ended up a little bit more fair. But I don't think a lot of people thought Brown was going to do that well. I kind of expected him to do well, maybe not top 12, but I do try and follow the rookies in the offseason pretty closely. And I knew he was a good running back, and also sliding into that system in Cincinnati, I knew he was a good pass catcher, and
Yeah.
I kind of expected him to overtake who was there before him, Zach Moss. To overtake Zach Moss by the end of the year, and maybe like by the end of the year have that like rookie hype, and then going into next year he would kind of start to move up the ADP and become like closer to top 12 running back next year. But yeah, I mean, I think considering the circumstance, everything being said, I think we're like nitpicking a little bit, but I think overall it was a pretty fair trade.
I think that not Zach Brown. I love that band. I think that Chase Brown is kind of ended up actually being what I think a lot of people expected Zach Charbonnet to kind of be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
that's why I'm not. I would still say that the Jahmyr Gibbs side on this is the winning side, depending on what that pick ends up being from Ryan.
Yeah.
But I only feel that way because I expect Cincinnati to bring in another running back. Chase Brown is a catching specialist. He's okay on the ground and in between the tackles. So I think they're going to bring somebody in to do the in between the tackle running and allow him to focus on the speciality that he does and kind of have a system like David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. But then the question is, are those two running backs as talented as David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs? And so then does it create like a Sonic and Knuckles light? And so you end up with a low end running back one at best. I'm with Chase Brown. So I think if they do that, it caps him to a low end RB if everything works out. Otherwise, I think he suffers and ends up as a high end RB2.
Zach Moss did sign a 2-year contract this offseason, so he does have one more year, and he has potential to return if they had made the playoffs from his injury. So, just for clarification.
Yeah, who cares? I think he's done. I think that he got that contract off of stepping in on the Colts, right?
Yeah, last year he looked good.
Yeah, and I think that the injury and then the Chase Brown, maybe they just don't even bring somebody in. Maybe they just have it baked in with Zach Moss already. But yeah, that's what I expected to see is just a RBVC going forward. I don't think Chase Brown can do it in between the tackles efficiently enough to get the job done alone. Also, Ladd McConkey is fantastic. I was very sad to trade him away, but
yeah, he's been great. We can go to wide receivers.
I was gonna say, like, I didn't harp on him on purpose, but also, like, again, like getting Chase Brown potential of what his potential could be based on what he looks like talent wise, plus Ladd McConkey, plus the first is like why I feel like in a few years it might feel like Anthony won this trade a little bit more.
Yeah, by the end of next season, this might look like a very different trade.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Totally. I think especially depending on what the pick ends up being. If the pick ends up being, even if it's like a wide receiver to a running back too, then I think you would have to give the winning side to Anthony and not Mark. But, we'll see.
Ashton Genty.
What about him?
That's what the pick's going to be.
104?
Yeah, he's going to fall because of his poor college football playoff performance.
Anthony's going to trade up with Brian for the 101 and take Ashton Genty 101. That's what's going to happen.
You guys should make a bet where he's like over under where he gets drafted. In fantasy. In fantasy.
In fantasy. As of today, he's top 2 for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would 100%.
Argument could be made, take your quarterback. I don't care who that is. Depends on what system they go to and all that. But take your quarterback 101 if you want that. But otherwise, if I'm not a quarterback needy team or if I don't like the landing spots, I think Ashton Genty's my pick at 101. Assuming he goes to a good landing spot. If he goes to a shit landing spot, then maybe that changes things. But like Dallas
pre-draft,
is going to
pre-draft. Yeah.
Pre-draft, Dallas is going to take a swing. Jerry Jones can't sit idly by and have people saying you should have signed Derrick Henry and not take a juicy, almost Heisman winning running back. there's zero chance he walks out of that draft not on the Dallas Cowboys.
They released Ezekiel Elliott because he's preemptively planning to have spot taken.
Yeah, we don't need you anymore. We already got Ashton Genty. Okay, anything else to add on the running backs, or shall we move on to wide receivers?
I think we can move on.
Yeah, I think we can move on.
Cool. All right, wide receivers, top 12. We've got Jamar Chase, number 1, outscoring Justin Jefferson by 66 points.
That's crazy. That's 2 weeks.
That's crazy. So Justin Jefferson comes in at number 2. Amon-Ra comes in at number 3. Then Brian Thomas Jr., CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Malik Neighbors, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Mike Evans, Jerry Jeudy. Reactions, go.
NFL looks promising with the young talent we have in the league.
The wide receivers are so good in the league right now.
Which is
That's
great.
just kind of like high level like analysis is like, look how many of these guys are like fucking under 25.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
CeeDee Lamb is the oldest person on this. Oh, no, I guess Terry McLaurin is there. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb is like an old guy in this list, and he's 26.
Which
Next
is
season
great
is 26.
Because it's like NFL is obviously pushing more towards like more passing, even with like the rules as far as like tackling and stuff. Like they're just putting the spotlight on quarterbacks and passing, and the wide receivers are just all studs. Even this past draft class, like just I feel like that class is like just have like to have these like so many rookies in the top 24.
Yeah. I'll just call out the rookie on here. So surprised to see Brian Thomas Jr. at number 4. What the fuck?
2 rookies.
There's
Two rookies on this list. Malik Neighbors.
Oh, Malik Neighbors. I was like, who am I missing? Malik
yeah,
Neighbors.
that guy. He's okay. He's
that guy. Yeah, he's great. But Brian Thomas Jr. being at number 4, crazy. Especially with Mac Jones throwing you the ball for 4 or 5 games.
Yep.
Yeah, no, he's good. Shout out to me. I traded him in the other league for like a random first halfway through the season.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Let me jump off him real quick.
Yeah, let me fuck with that. But yeah, no, he I mean, I think the crazy to compare the top 3 is supposed to be MHJ, Neighbors, and Adunze.
Yep.
And then Brian Thomas, and then even Ladd McConkey was kind of right there. And to have Brian Thomas not only
Xavier
sneak in.
Worthy was above him, yeah.
Yeah, Xavier Worthy, forgot about him. And Brian Thomas not only sneak in, but be like, hey, yeah, I'm just gonna go up top 4.
Yeah.
Over Lamb.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'll see you guys later. Yeah. On that offense.
Yeah.
It's not like he was on the Chiefs or, another like high scoring like offense on the Jaguars.
Yeah.
I mean, Malik Neighbors being top 8 on a fucking offense that has literally just gave up halfway through the year. Oh, I don't know. Did he miss that much?
I think he missed 4 weeks this year. Malik Neighbors did.
Good up.
Maybe he was only 3. 2 for the concussion and 1 for something else, maybe.
He and Drew Lock are the reason they don't have the first overall pick anymore.
With that being said, Mark, you're a big MHJ homer. What do you think happens with him?
I'm fine. He showed flashes. Strangely, it just anytime I watched them, they just seemed out of sync, Kyler Murray and MHJ. So like I'm hoping that it's just getting into the rhythm and catching up to the speed of the NFL and all that stuff. So I'm not really worried about him. I honestly don't know where he finished. I don't know if you guys can find that on the fly, but yeah, he didn't have a good season, but he showed flashes, and I'm happy to have him on my team. I'll give him the time that he needs to develop because I think he's a tremendous talent.
32nd wide receiver.
32nd?
32.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I'll allow the development to happen.
Goodness,
yeah, I think honestly, it just seemed like him and Murray were not on the same page. Like I don't think it was anything he did wrong. It wasn't missed passes. It wasn't drop passes. It wasn't poor route running. I just think that him and Murray need to put up a little bit more chemistry there. I agree. I think he'll be fine. He's a stud.
Yeah, and I
It's
think getting
very
another weapon over there to take
yeah.
some pressure off of him would be nice too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's we're so lucky to have like some of these wide receivers as rookies perform so well early, but it's not.
Yeah.
Wide receivers usually take longer to develop versus like rookie running backs usually will like bust off rookie years. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, not
I think
featured
they'll be
on
fine.
this list. Not featured on this list is Nico Collins, who I traded away for Marvin Harrison Jr. And it
Yeah,
took him 3 seasons to actually show up.
right,
And
right.
it took them getting a quarterback.
Yeah, but it also took 3 seasons for him to actually do anything. If you go back and look at his seasons, his first couple seasons, he was dog shit. I'm like left for dead. So to go from that to a bona fide wide receiver one, even though again he's not on this list because of injuries, but is pretty impressive. So yeah, it takes time to develop. JSN being up here is great to see because I really, really liked him coming out of college. And then he just showed nothing his rookie year. And so I got off of him in a lot of places, unfortunately. So I'm glad to see him succeeding.
I feel like too, speaking of that, so correct me if you guys feel differently, but I feel like so if you look at points per game, right? So a lot of wide receivers had injuries this year that
Yeah.
knocked them out of top 12, which is unusual because usually wide receivers are healthier. The running backs have more injuries, and I feel like that wasn't as heavy on running back injuries this year. But just a quick look, if you look at points per game, you've got T. Higgins at 3, you've got Puka at 6, you've got Nico at 7, and then you've got Brown at 12. So pretty much Nico, Puka, and T. Higgins, who all had phenomenal stats when they played. Just a lot of them are injured and didn't play as many games, so they didn't make it on the list. But that just kind of goes to show the immense amount of talent outside of the top 12 and wide receivers. I mean, Puka or Nico are also studs, all wide receivers. I think any of us would be happy to have on our teams.
Yeah. I mean, Puka was hurt, like the first half of the season or something like that. So, yeah, you're right. Like the league, like I said, the league's in really good shape. I think, maybe it's just we're hitting that point where everybody's a baby, but it's exciting to see what feels like a bunch of like stud young guys. You know what I mean? Like the league moved on from the guys that we grew up watching and it hasn't gotten any worse, which I think is a great thing.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Anybody else you guys want to call out before we talk about who is going to be out of the top 12 next season?
Yeah, I'd like to just shout out, being a Bucs homer, Mike Evans. He missed several weeks with his injury. So him being on number 11, plus the season Godwin had before he got injured, Godwin was on pace to be like a top 3 wide receiver. So for him to still be able to
points per game.
Yeah, for him to be able to end up number 11, I think he a lot of times is discredited because for a long time he was on a bad offense before Brady came. Obviously Baker has helped him out a lot with that. And he has never had less than 1,000 receiving yards in a season. He's in season 11 right now, and he's 85 yards away from having another season of more than 1,000 receiving yards. So as long as he gets those 85 yards against the Saints, he'll keep up that record. So dude is good. And in my opinion, first ballot Hall of Famer. We'll see. But
I was just going to ask you, Bo, do you think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer?
I do.
I emphatically do not think he's first.
I can see how a lot of people, I think a lot of people would say that, but
I've come around a lot on Mike Evans recently, this season, especially.
Let me put into context for you. Sorry to interrupt, Greg. Let me put in context what first ballot Hall of Fame wide receiver context is, and tell me if you think that he belongs in this class. There's a name I don't know, so I'll start there. Steve Largent. I don't know that name. 1995 inductee. I don't know that.
Everybody knows Steve Largent,
right?
Oh, here's another one I skipped over. Paul Warfield, 1983. So we'll just go with the more recent ones since we know them. Okay? Calvin Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
Randy Moss, Jerry Rice. Does he belong with those guys?
I would say he is not in the same class as those guys, but I also think it depends relative who else is in the same Hall of Fame class as him when it comes time to do the ballots.
Not necessarily, because you don't have to vote anybody in. There's not a requirement to vote
I
somebody
guess
in
that's
every
true.
year.
I guess that's true. Yeah, I mean, I see your point. I am admittedly biased because I am a huge Bucks fan and I followed him. I just think it's impressive what he has done, considering before Brady came, the quarterbacks that he has had to work with. He's been on a, for the most part, pretty poor team and pretty bad offense. And I think that sometimes that shadows his stats in his ability to play because he hasn't been in a high producing offense, but to be able to do what he's done up until that point, I think at least puts him into the topic of conversation.
He's a Hall of Famer for sure. I just don't think he's first ballot.
Hear me out. Hear me out. Okay. Mike Evans, 11 seasons. Calvin Johnson, 9 years. Played 9 seasons. Mike Evans currently sits at 105 touchdowns with a catch percentage of 58.4%, averaging about 75.4 yards a game. Okay. Calvin Johnson has 83 touchdowns, averaging had a 55.7% catch percentage and averaged 86.1 yards per game. So more yards per game, but his catch percentage is down, and Mike Evans had a better catch percentage. Mike Evans also has more touchdowns. Granted, he has 2 extra seasons, but
3 extra seasons.
9 and 11. This is his 11th year.
This is his 11th year, or this was?
This is his.
This is
my apologies.
But like, he's not that far off. Like, I get what you're saying, but like, I think Mike Evans is just, and I said this in the doc, I think that, I think Mike Evans is the most underrated wide receiver in the league right now. And I think he gets some props, but I think that he is quietly one of, if not like one of the best wide receivers in the league. He's so consistent. And yeah, he had Tom Brady helping him for 2 seasons, 3 seasons, but you know what I mean? He's done it with a lot less consistency at the quarterback position than some of the other guys that are doing some pretty huge things. So,
yeah, I think when you say those names, you're like, yeah, of course he doesn't belong because of the name value. But again, going back to Greg's point, he doesn't have the name value because the Bucks were trash for so long before Brady came that it discredits what he has done in offenses that were bad. And it's not like he had Godwin that whole time either. Like before Godwin came, he was like one of the only good offensive pieces in the team. And he's been able to keep it up for 11 seasons.
he also didn't start playing football until his senior year of high school. Fun fact.
So I'm just looking at some stats. So yeah, I mean, I guess I got to give Mike Evans a little bit more credit. They are on roughly the same pace of touchdowns per game.
Yeah.
He and Calvin Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to close that gap because it sounds really high, but having 2 extra seasons of touchdowns is a lot. Right. But my mind wasn't closing that gap. So yeah, it's basically the same pace. Calvin also was outpacing him by a little bit, but not. It was like 0.68 to 0.63 or something like that.
It is fair to acknowledge the extra game last year and the extra game this year. That makes a difference.
Oh, to get to 1,000? Yeah.
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 But with that being
also, so I think ultimately, to answer your question, Mark, I think from my perspective, it would be that I think that if Mike Evans is a first ballot Hall of Famer, it will surprise a lot of people, but I don't think that it's undeserved.
Okay. Fair. All right. Out of the top 12 next season, who are you guys taking?
Like, who are we taking down?
Yep, who are we taking down? There's an easy low-hanging fruit. One of these things is not like
I'll
the
just
others.
say it because we kind of put it in the show sheet already. Jerry Judy. What's going on there?
What the fuck?
Jerry Judy, get the
Was
fuck
it like
out
3
here.
games with Jameis Winston going on for like 50 points for 3 weeks in a row?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like all season. It was like, yeah, Judy's been great. Judy's been great. He's got a 36-point game in week 13, a 23-point game in week 11. But if you look at weeks 1 through 10, it's like 2 points, 4 points, 2 points, 10 points, 6 points. It's like horrible. And then Jameis Winston, the gunslinger, comes in. And then after week 10, 22, 23, 11, 36, 14, 16, 3, and 16. So that back half of the season was where he got all his points.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on what the Browns do, and I have zero faith that they do the right thing. So I expect Deshaun Watson to be back at quarterback next year, and therefore I want none of it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that. To not go with the low-hanging fruit, I said I could see Garrett Wilson falling out of the top 12 next year. And my reasoning there is just that, like, it feels like the whole situation in New York is so tumultuous that, like, you know, they're not in a position to go draft a good young stud quarterback. So they're going to have to go get somebody. And I think that Aaron Rodgers leaving that place is going to leave that place, in a worse mess than it was. And it wasn't in a great place when he got there. So I don't know. I could just see this next year being a year where Garrett Wilson doesn't get traded. He ends up getting frustrated and just checks out for the season and ends up not making the top 12.
You saw that he said he would demand a trade if they brought back Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
I don't think that Aaron Rodgers leaving help. I know that, like, for his own sanity it helps, but I don't know that it helps like his draft stock or his ability to get back into the top 12.
What if you're right in this? I'm Sam Darnold.
Then I think there's, I'm wrong on that. I don't have Garrett Wilson, so it doesn't matter. But, like, I just think that, like, that's my thought is, like, if I'm pulling somebody just to not go with what feels like the low hanging fruit of Jerry Jeudy, here's my reasoning for why I think Garrett Wilson could be a contender.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I saw that article because I think either in the same article or similar one, they said Sauce Gardner has come out, not with trade talks, but as far as saying, like, he doesn't get along with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, it's a little different because he's on the defensive side. But to have some of your, like, young, most prominent players on the team not agreeing with the quarterback who is supposed to be, like, a veteran and, like, a huge leader, being the name
on the field coach type.
Yeah, it's just as like the whole the Browns and the Jets, it's like they can never do anything right. Like they always mess everything up. So yeah, I mean, I think it totally is dependent on quarterback and coaching next year. I think that it could be a huge swing. I think he's got the talent, but also, Devontae Adams moved in, so that didn't help him at all in the back because he was doing okay towards the middle of the year, and then Devontae Adams came in and he kind of vultured a lot of that work from him towards the back, like, couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, because he and Aaron Rodgers are secretly in love.
Yeah, so
I think that's a good kiss already.
Gay.
You're not allowed to say that, Bo.
Yeah, you're right. My bad. Hey, I'm the back-to-back champ. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Do whatever I want. All right, yeah, we'll move on to the last group here, tight ends. Tight ends were interesting this year. This list is all over the place. So top 12, we got Brock Bowers outscoring by 16 points. George Kittle comes in at number 2. Trey McBride at 3. Jonnu Smith at number 4. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, Zach Ertz, Tucker Kraft, David Njoku, Hunter Henry, and Cade Ott.
Jonnu Smith, baby.
This list, like I said, is all over the place. Like, Jonnu Smith being up there, Zach Ertz finding his way up there, David Njoku still being up there is kind of wild to me. And Kate Otten, who the fuck would have seen that coming this season? Like, what is this list?
Yeah, but don't you feel like tight end is kind of always that way outside of like a top couple studs? Tight end's like a total crapshoot. It's basically like touchdowns. Like whoever gets a touchdown ends up making it out there.
And the studs are all here. It's just the order is a little skewed from what we thought, right? Like, George Kittle's here, Travis Kelce's here, Mark Andrews here, Sam Laporta's here. So like you have your studs, but like, yeah, Jonnu Smith being in there, that was a Tua starting to rely on him on drives down in the fourth quarter and just literally single-handedly like carrying us down the field. So I said that Mark Andrews is a bit of surprise to me. Him being number 6, like I feel like just to me, like more than anything illustrates the point of how like up and down and chaotic the tight end position was this season. Because like you were mad at Mark Andrews' season this year.
I tried to trade him so much.
And no one wanted him.
No.
Because he's number 6 and somehow still had a very disappointing season.
Well, him and Kelce kind of followed that same path where right when the season started, you're like, they're old, they're done, they're not going to do anything. And then they were like that for several weeks. And it wasn't until like, because like even before the Kelce trade, like when I traded for him, he was not like doing that great. And then they had a couple weeks where they started doing good. And then towards the back half of the season, it picked up again.
Yeah, I will say like, as the Mark Andrews owner, I was okay having him on my team once I felt comfortable that he was back in the offensive scheme. So I missed his best games, so that's frustrating. But once I felt comfortable with him, I just used him. So I ended up being okay with him on my team because he's scored more often than not.
Yeah. And I think that's like, it just felt like he was so touchdown dependent. So, you know what I mean? Like when we're watching the game, it's like, why isn't he involved at all? He's open every play.
Yeah.
I feel like with tight end, that's kind of what you want, though, is that safety blanket. Like, because the position is so erratic, you're not really like always counting for solid like tight end 1 games in the same sense that you are just like, okay, if you can at least get me like 10 15 points, then I'm like happy with that. Versus wide receivers or running backs, you're like, oh, I want you to like go off. Like with my tight ends, I don't always I want them to go off, but I'm not always expecting them to go off. I just don't want them to do the opposite and put up like a 3-point game.
Yeah.
So to kind of go off of that, my other one that I kind of wanted to point it out, and he finished 7th, so it's not that bad, but Sam Laporta coming in 7th kind of feels disappointing. And like, I'm aware that it's because he's like we talked about with Jahmyr Gibbs a lot earlier and all of that. Like he's just on an offense that, it's a super high powered offense and there are so many mouths to feed there. But like, I don't know. I just felt like he was like a top 3 tight end coming into the season by everyone's expectations. So finishing 7th somehow even then still feels like it's, well, he could have done better. And top 7 finish is great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I was a little surprised that he made it up there, but just looking at his games, he definitely put together a string of games at the end of the season that were useful. And so that's probably why he ended up here, because the start of the year, he just was not being used. Like you said, way too many mouths to feed. And then Montgomery and Gibbs being there, you just hand them the ball every time. And then when you are throwing the ball, it's usually to Amon-Ra. So like Sam Laporta is the 4th, 5th option on the team. And that's no fault to his own. But then I think when David Montgomery went down was the time, he jumps up the pecking order all of a sudden. So, that's where you saw his opportunities start to climb.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
With that being said, it was when David Montgomery went down. So let's say they go back into next season, everyone's healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is he a top 12 tight end?
I think he still can finish top 12 because he did this season. But yeah, like I think, you have to assume that somebody might get hurt, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think that, he's shown to be somebody that can be counted on. It's just, again, like it just depends on, I think, like hot hand and favorites. So
I think he bounces back. I think he goes back up a couple spots and ends up somewhere in top 5. But I do think compared to what he was projected to do, I think a lot of people would consider this like a bust, even though, like you said, it was top 7. That's still really good because he was projected to be like the top 1 or 2 tight end.
Yes. Yeah. You were expecting much bigger things from Sam Laporta this year.
And I think honestly now, like as I've been looking at this list more while we've been talking, it's kind of like a repeat of most years where I draw the line at 7. Outside of Jonnu Smith, that one was kind of like not expected. But if you draw that line at 7, everyone above that line, you're like, okay, yeah, I imagine them being in that list, maybe in just a different order. And then everyone under that, you're kind of like, I guess you're on here, but like you wouldn't expect any of them to consistently be on there next year. But that's how tight end is every year. It's just like totally random outside of a couple like top studs, like who ends up making the list. And I think that's exactly how the list landed. Like everything under 7 is kind of like, they could be on there next year, they could not, but no one that you're like super putting your flag down on, or at least not for me. I don't know what you guys think.
No, I mean, I agree. I think, like I said earlier, like, like George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, like those are names you expect to see on the list. But like, the order is so like, roll of the dice every season. So,
yeah.
Do we want to spend time talking about who we don't think is going to be there, considering we just kind of said that we expect half the list not to be there?
No, I think my point, like I said, everything under 7, I'm kind of like, it could be totally different. I expect the top 7 outside of maybe Jonnu Smith to be on the list again, just in a random order.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, gentlemen, we're going to do this live and on air. Are we doing our next segment, or are we calling it here for the sake of being at 2.5 hours already? Do we give the people another segment, or do we hold that segment off for another episode?
I say we could do a whole nother episode just on doing this whole thing. So,
all right, then that is going to do it for us this week, unless you gentlemen have anything else that you would like to add. Bo, specifically, if there's anything that you would like to get on your stupid championship soapbox for, now's your time and only time, because from here on out, we're moving on. You're old news.
Well, I will say until someone else claims the 2025 championship, I am your reigning overlord, your back-to-back-to-back champion. Everyone who wanted me to lose, you can all suck it. Rob, Mark, I know you had a very passionate discussion about how much you hate me. You guys can go to hell. I'm sorry for your mental health issues that you may have to deal with. But you know what? You guys all did this to yourself, okay? So just do better, be better, and I'll be looking down on all of you until next year.
Fucking rude.
You told me, you specifically said if I was a champion, I would be way more obnoxious. So I took that as an invitation to take it up a little notch and not be as nice as usual.
But if I won one championship, if I won this year, everybody would have gotten like gifts from me of just being like, here's your gift. There's a t-shirt that says I suck at fantasy football. And I would just send you guys random shit that claim that I'm the best. That's what I plan on doing when I win.
I've got $320 coming my way, so keep an eye on it.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you guys will be getting some late Christmas gifts with some reminders on there. I lost the bet this many times by this many points.
You look back like I'll edit this out. Bo, you should look at how many points you beat Corey by and just send him that many pennies in the mail. Be like, here, sorry you lost by 36 points or whatever it was.
All right.
Or you could just give it to him.
Yeah.
No, it's
That's
better in the
good.
mail.
I'll drone it over wherever a ship is out over
There
the
you go.
ocean and just
Yeah,
drop it.
send it to him while he's at sea. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I
All right.
appreciate you hanging in there with me on this one. Everybody who took the time to listen, appreciate you. This was a long one, but hopefully you had fun. It was a great season looking back on everything. Looking forward to the off season. If there is anything you want me to do on this podcast, or if you want to join me at all, if you have ideas you want to talk about, just reach out. Happy to jump on. All right, everybody. Bye.
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 I saw your face.